Some choices save you, others damn you. Tonight, Adrian Vale would make both. The rain hammered Chicago's streets like bullets on concrete. Inside the Eclipse Lounge, a woman's hands trembled around a glass she hadn't touched. Across the room, Adrian Vale, the man who'd built empires on calculated cruelty, watched her with the same focus he used to dismantle rivals. When she approached, desperation barely masked, asking for one dance to escape the man stalking toward her, Adrian saw two futures: walk away clean or step into something that would unravel everything he'd spent a decade building. He took her hand. Welcome to a story where protection becomes obsession, and one moment rewrites two lives. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The Eclipse Lounge smelled like expensive whiskey and bad decisions. Adrian Vale sat in the corner booth, his corner booth, where the shadows bent just right and he could watch every entrance without turning his head. The leather beneath him was worn smooth from years of meetings that never made it into any official record. His glass of Macallan sat untouched. He didn't drink when he worked, and in his world, everywhere was work. The lounge pulsed with jazz that was too good for the crowd it drew. Tourists mixing with locals, business types trying too hard, women in dresses that cost more than they should. Adrian had stopped noticing most people years ago. They were patterns, data points, threats or assets, nothing in between. But tonight, something caught his attention. She was sitting at the bar, 3 stools from the end. Dark hair falling past her shoulders, a navy dress that looked elegant but not expensive. She'd been nursing the same drink for 40 minutes. Adrian knew because he'd been counting. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in that understated way that suggested she didn't know it, but because she was afraid. Fear had a signature. The way she kept checking the door, the tension in her shoulders, how her fingers whitened around the glass every time someone walked past. Adrian recognized it because he'd spent 15 years making people feel exactly that way. "Mr. Vale?" The voice came from his left. Marco, his second, slid into the booth without waiting for invitation. "The shipment cleared customs. No complications." "Good. Castellano wants a meeting, says it's urgent." "It's always urgent with him. Tell him Thursday." Marco nodded, started to leave, then paused. "You watching someone?" Adrian's eyes hadn't moved from the woman at the bar. "No." "Right." Marco knew better than to push. "I'll be outside." The moment Marco left, the situation changed. A man entered the lounge. Late 30s, expensive suit that didn't fit quite right, cologne Adrian could smell from across the room. He moved with the aggressive confidence of someone who'd never been truly challenged. The woman at the bar went rigid. Adrian leaned forward slightly. The man walked straight to her, placing his hand on her lower back with the possessive familiarity of ownership. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Their conversation was too quiet to hear over the music, but Adrian could read the progression. Her body language screaming discomfort, his hand tightening, her trying to create distance without causing a scene. Adrian should have looked away, should have finished his business and left. This wasn't his problem. In his line of work, you didn't survive by playing hero for strangers in bars. But then the woman stood abruptly, and the man grabbed her wrist. Adrian was moving before he'd decided to move. He crossed the lounge in 8 strides, approaching from the man's blind side. The woman saw him first. Her eyes, brown, wide, terrified, locked onto his face, and something flickered there. Recognition, maybe. Or just desperation finding anything to grab onto. "Elena!" Adrian's voice carried just enough authority to make the man's hand loosen. "I've been waiting." The woman, Elena, stared at him for 2 seconds that stretched. Then understanding flashed across her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize the time." The man hadn't let go of her wrist. "Who the hell are you?" Adrian looked at him properly for the first time, saw the slight glaze in his eyes. Whiskey courage mixed with something else. Entitlement, probably. The kind that came from never hearing no from the right people. Someone you don't want to know. Adrian kept his voice level, almost pleasant. The kind of pleasant that people with any sense understood as a warning. "Let her go? This is a private conversation." "Not anymore." The man's grip tightened. Elena made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest, the same cold that preceded most of his business decisions. The kind that made people disappear. He stepped closer, dropping his voice to a register only the three of them could hear. You have 3 seconds to let her go and walk away. After that, I stopped being polite. I don't know who you think you are. 1. The man's face flushed. You can't just... 2. Something in Adrian's eyes must have finally registered. The man released Elena's wrist like it had burned him, stumbling back half a step. This isn't over, he muttered, but he was already moving toward the door, trying to salvage dignity from retreat. Adrian watched until he was gone, then turned to Elena. She was rubbing her wrist, not quite meeting his eyes. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. No, I didn't. I mean... She stopped, seemed to recalibrate. I'm sorry for dragging you into whatever that was. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to walk over. Adrian studied her face. Up close, he could see the exhaustion under the makeup, the kind that came from weeks of not sleeping right. Is he going to be a problem? He's always a problem. The words came out tired, like she'd said them too many times. But he'll back off for tonight. He always does when there are witnesses. And when there aren't? Elena's silence was answer enough. The music shifted. Something slower. A piano melody Adrian half recognized. Around them, couples were moving to the small dance floor. Elena glanced at it, then back at Adrian, and something desperate flickered across her face again. This is going to sound insane, she said quietly, but would you dance with me? Adrian raised an eyebrow. He's still watching from outside. She didn't look toward the windows, but Adrian caught the reflection in the bar mirror. The man was there, phone to his ear, pacing. If he thinks I'm with someone, actually with someone, he might finally leave me alone. Just for tonight, just... She stopped herself. Sorry, that's too much to ask from a stranger who already saved me once. Adrian should have said no. Should have walked back to his booth, finished his business, and forgotten this entire interaction. He had a reputation built on being untouchable, uninvolved, unmoved by anything except results and profit. Instead, he held out his hand. One dance. Elena's surprise was genuine. She hesitated, then took his hand, and Adrian led her to the dance floor. The moment his hand settled on her waist, he felt her trembling. Not obvious. She was fighting hard to control it, but it was there. He adjusted his grip slightly, giving her more space, less pressure. I'm not going to hurt you, he said quietly. I know. But her body didn't quite believe it yet. They moved slowly, finding an awkward rhythm. Elena was stiff at first, every muscle tensed like she was preparing to run. Adrian kept his movements deliberate, predictable. No sudden shifts, no tightening grip, just the basic structure of a dance that neither of them seemed particularly invested in. What's your name? Elena asked after a moment. Adrian. I'm Elena, but you already knew that. Lucky guess. A small smile touched her lips. You're a terrible liar. Usually people say I'm an excellent liar. Then they're not paying attention. She met his eyes for the first time since they'd started dancing. Thank you, Adrian. Really. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't... You would have handled it. He meant it. There was steel under her fear. He'd seen it in the way she'd stood up to the man, even terrified. You've been handling it. Not well. You're still here. That counts. They danced in silence for a few measures. Adrian became aware of details, the scent of her shampoo, something floral but subtle, the calluses on her fingertips that suggested she worked with her hands, the way she kept glancing toward the windows, tracking movement. He's gone, Adrian said. Left about 30 seconds ago. Elena's relief was palpable, but she didn't pull away. He'll be back. He always comes back. Ex-boyfriend? Ex-husband. Almost ex-husband. The divorce isn't final yet. She said it matter-of-factly, but Adrian heard the weight behind each word. He doesn't believe in letting go of things he thinks belong to him. You don't belong to anyone. Try telling him that. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have, multiple times, with lawyers, with restraining orders. Nothing sticks. He's too connected, too careful about how he operates, always just on the right side of legal. Adrian recognized the pattern. He'd used similar tactics himself, in different contexts. Stay clean on paper, operate in the gray spaces where proof was harder to establish. What does he want? Me back. or me destroyed. I'm not sure he knows the difference anymore. Elena's voice dropped. I left him 6 months ago. Thought I'd finally gotten away. Then he started showing up. My work, my apartment, places I go regularly. Never does anything overt enough to violate the restraining order. Just exists in my space, reminding me that he can reach me whenever he wants. Why tonight? Why here? I was supposed to meet a friend. She canceled last minute. I should have left, but I just... Elena's breath hitched slightly. I'm so tired of running, of changing my plans because he might be there. So I stayed, ordered a drink I didn't want, and pretended I belonged somewhere for once. The song was ending. Adrian knew he should let her go, walk away, return to the life that didn't include damaged women with dangerous exes. But his hand stayed where it was. What do you do, Elena? For work? She seemed surprised by the question. I'm an art restorer, mostly paintings, museums, private collections, sometimes insurance work when something's been damaged. You fix broken things. I try to. Doesn't always work. Sometimes the damage is too deep, or it's been handled wrong for too long. But sometimes... A genuine smile crossed her face, brief but real. Sometimes you can bring something back. Make it whole again. We're close enough. Adrian understood metaphor when he heard it. A new song started. Something faster. Elena stepped back, breaking contact. I should go. I've taken up enough of your night. Where are you parked? I took the train. My car's in the shop. I'll have my driver take you home. That's really not necessary. Elena. Adrian kept his voice firm but not harsh. He knows you took the train, which means he might be waiting at your stop, or following you from there. Let me make sure you get home safe. She wanted to argue. He could see it in her face, but exhaustion and fear won over pride. Okay, thank you. Adrian pulled out his phone, texted Marco. 2 minutes later, they were walking out of the lounge together, Adrian's hand hovering near Elena's back without quite touching. The street was wet from earlier rain, reflecting the neon signs in fractured colors. A black Mercedes pulled up. Marco got out, opened the back door without comment. He'd seen enough strange situations not to question this one. Elena paused before getting in. I don't know how to repay you for this. You don't need to repay anything. Still feels like I owe you. You don't? Adrian held the door steady. But if you find yourself in trouble again, my office is on 5th and Madison. Vale Consulting, top floor. Vale? Elena's eyes widened slightly. As in Vale Consulting? Yes. Adrian didn't elaborate. Most people in Chicago knew the name. Knew enough not to ask too many questions about what kind of consulting required that level of security and discretion. Elena climbed into the car, and for a moment, Adrian thought that would be it. The end of a strange encounter. A good deed that cost him nothing but 20 minutes. Then Elena rolled down the window. Adrian, whatever you are, whatever you do, I'm still glad you were there tonight. So am I. It was only after the Mercedes pulled away that Adrian realized he'd meant it. Marco appeared at his elbow. Want to tell me what that was about? No. She in trouble? Probably. We getting involved? Adrian watched the taillights disappear around a corner. No, we're not. But even as he said it, something felt off. Like a door had opened that he couldn't quite close again. They went back inside. Adrian returned to his booth, picked up his phone, made 3 calls that restructured a shipping route, and solved a personnel problem in Milwaukee. Business as usual. Normal operations. Except he couldn't stop thinking about the trembling in Elena's hands. The exhaustion in her voice. The way she'd said he always comes back, like it was an inevitable force of nature. At 2 a.m., Adrian left the lounge and drove to his penthouse in River North. The city stretched below him, glittering and indifferent. He poured himself a drink he wouldn't finish and stood at the window, watching the patterns of traffic and light. His phone buzzed. A text from Marco. She got home safe. Building looked secure. No signs of the ex. Adrian typed back, good. Then, put someone on her building. Discreet. Just for tonight. Marco's response came immediately. Already done. Adrian smiled slightly. Marco had been with him for 12 years. Knew how he thought. Knew when we're not getting involved actually meant I'm already involved, just haven't admitted it yet. The problem was, Adrian didn't get involved. Not like this. He'd built his reputation on being untouchable, unmovable, interested only in outcomes and profit. Emotions were liabilities. Attachments were weaknesses. He'd learned that lesson early and well, but something about Elena had gotten under his skin. Maybe it was the fear he'd recognized. Maybe it was the strength he'd seen underneath it. Maybe it was just timing, the right person in the wrong moment, or the wrong person in the right one. Or maybe, Adrian thought as he finally turned away from the window, it was simpler than that. Maybe he was just tired of being the man who walked away. Come on. 3 days passed before Adrian saw Elena again. He didn't plan it, wasn't looking for her. He'd simply had a meeting with a client who collected rare paintings and needed help acquiring a particularly difficult piece. The meeting had been at the Chicago Art Institute, and Adrian had arrived early out of habit. That's when he'd seen her. Elena was in one of the restoration studios, visible through a large window designed to let visitors observe the process. She wore a white coat over jeans, her hair pulled back, completely focused on the painting in front of her. Adrian watched as she worked with delicate tools he couldn't name, her movements precise and confident. This was different from the woman he'd met at the lounge. No fear, no hesitation, just absolute concentration and skill. He stood there for 10 minutes, watching her work. She never looked up. Beautiful, isn't it? Adrian turned. An older woman stood beside him, museum badge identifying her as Dr. Sarah Chen, senior curator. The restoration process, she continued. Most people don't appreciate how much work goes into saving these pieces. Elena's one of the best we have. That painting she's working on? It was in a fire last year. Insurance company had already written it off as total loss. But Elena said she could save it, and she was right. How long does something like that take? Months. Sometimes years. Depends on the damage. Dr. Chen smiled. Elena says every painting tells you what it needs. You just have to listen. I think that's why she's so good. She actually cares about the stories locked in the canvas. Adrian's phone buzzed, his client arriving. He should go, but he found himself asking, does she work here full-time? Contract basis. She has her own studio for private clients, but she takes museum projects when something interests her. This one interested her. Dr. Chen paused. Are you a collector, Mr. Vale? And no, not exactly. Just appreciate the work. Recognition flickered in Dr. Chen's eyes. She knew the name, knew enough to be careful with her next words. Well, if you're ever interested in restoration services, Elena Hart is the person to call. I can provide her contact information. That won't be necessary. Thank you. Adrian walked away, met his client, had a productive conversation about provenance and acquisition strategies. Normal business. Nothing unusual. Except he'd memorized the name of the painting Elena was working on. Woman at Window, by an artist he'd never heard of. He'd looked it up later. 19th century minor painter, not particularly valuable except to the family who'd owned it for 5 generations. The kind of piece Elena could have turned down, should have turned down given how damaged it was. But she'd taken it anyway, because she cared about the story. That night, Adrian's head of security, a woman named Rachel, who never asked questions she didn't need answered, knocked on his office door. The surveillance on Elena Hart's building, she said without preamble. You want me to continue it? Adrian had authorized 3 days. Tonight was day 3. Has there been any activity? Ex-husband drove by twice yesterday. Didn't stop, didn't approach, just slow passes. Classic intimidation pattern. Continue the surveillance. Extend it to her studio too. Rachel nodded, started to leave, then turned back. Boss, if this becomes a protection detail, I need to know parameters. Are we intervening if he approaches? Are we just watching? Good question. Adrian didn't have a good answer. If he violates the restraining order, intervene. Otherwise, just document. And if he gets creative, stays legal but threatening, then document that too. I want to know his patterns. After Rachel left, Adrian sat in his office and admitted the truth to himself. He was involved now. Not in the way he got involved with business, calculating, detached, focused on outcomes. This was messier, more complicated, more dangerous. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Vale. Mr. Vale? The voice was female, uncertain. This is Elena Hart. I got your number from Dr. Chen at the museum. I hope that's okay. Adrian's attention sharpened. It's fine. Is something wrong? No, no, nothing like that. She paused. I wanted to thank you again for the other night and for having your driver make sure I got home safe. How did you know about the driver? He told me before I got out of the car. Said you'd asked him to confirm I made it inside okay. A smile in her voice now. That was kind. It was practical. Your ex seems like the type to wait around. He is. The smile faded. Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. I wanted to ask if there's something I should be worried about accepting help from you. Direct. Adrian appreciated that. What do you mean? I'm not naive, Mr. Vale. I know your name. I know your reputation. I know that people like you don't usually help people like me without wanting something in return. People like me, powerful, connected, the kind of powerful that makes other powerful people nervous. Elena's voice was steady, but he heard the underlying tension. So I'm asking directly, what do you want from me? Adrian considered lying. It would be easier. But she'd called him a terrible liar once, and she'd been right. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I can tell you what I don't want. I don't want your gratitude. I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't want anything you're not freely offering. Silence on the other end. Then, that's not a very reassuring answer. No, it's not. But it's an honest one. More silence. Adrian waited. He'd negotiated enough deals to know when to push and when to let the other person think. Okay, Elena said finally. I appreciate the honesty, even if it's unsettling. Are you calling about something else, besides thanking me? Actually, yes. She sounded hesitant now. My ex, his name is David Morse. He sent flowers to my studio today, with a note. Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. What did the note say? I saw you had coffee at Morrison's yesterday. The chocolate croissant looked good. I should join you next time. Elena's voice shook slightly. I did have coffee there yesterday, and I did order a chocolate croissant. He was watching me, Mr. Vale, watching me close enough to see what I ate. Have you reported this to the police? They said flowers and a note aren't a violation of the restraining order. He didn't approach me directly, didn't make a threat. Just a creepy observation that any defense attorney could spin as coincidence. Adrian stood, already moving toward his coat. Where are you now? At my studio. Why? Stay there. Lock the door. I'm coming to you. Mr. Vale, you don't have to. Adrian. And yes, I do. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up before she could argue, then called Rachel. Elena Hart's studio. I need the address and I need someone there now. Already have someone nearby. Sending the address to your phone. Adrian was in his car 3 minutes later, Marco driving while he made calls. First to his lawyer, a man who specialized in the kind of legal work that never saw the inside of a courtroom. Second to a private investigator who owed him favors. Third to someone who didn't have a title but had access to information that wasn't supposed to be accessible. By the time Adrian arrived at Elena's studio, a converted warehouse space in West Loop, he had David Morse's complete history downloaded to his phone. Everything from traffic tickets to business licenses to rumors that had never made it to official reports. The picture wasn't pretty. Morse was a commercial real estate developer. Mid-level success, family money backing his ventures. 2 previous marriages, both ending quietly with NDAs and financial settlements. A pattern of complaints from female employees that had been settled out of court. A reputation for being difficult to work with but too connected to avoid. Classic profile of a man who'd learned that money and connections could solve most problems. Adrian was not most problems. He found Elena's studio on the 3rd floor. Rachel was already there, standing outside the door like she just happened to be passing by. She nodded at Adrian, gestured that everything was clear, and melted back into the shadows. Adrian knocked. Elena, it's Adrian. The door opened immediately. Elena looked tired. Her earlier confidence from the museum replaced by the same exhaustion he'd seen at the lounge. She stepped back to let him in. The studio was impressive. High ceilings, north-facing windows, the smell of solvents and paint. Work tables covered with tools and materials. Several paintings in various stages of restoration. Everything organized but lived in. You got here fast, Elena said. I was already in the area. A lie, but a small one. Adrian looked around the space. Do you work here alone? Usually. Sometimes I have an assistant, but not for this project. Cameras? One at the entrance to the building, nothing inside. Adrian made a mental note to change that. Show me where the flowers were delivered. Elena led him to her desk. The bouquet was still there. White lilies and roses, expensive arrangement from a high-end florist. The card was next to it, exactly as she'd described. Adrian photographed both without touching them. I'm going to have someone come look at these, he said. Check if there's anything unusual. GPS tracker, listening device, hidden camera. Probably nothing, but better to know. You think he'd do that? I think men like him do whatever they think they can get away with. Adrian turned to face her fully. Elena, I need you to understand something. This pattern, the watching, the following, the flowers with creepy notes, it escalates. Men like David Morse don't stop because you ignore them. They stop when they're forced to stop. I know, she wrapped her arms around herself. I've read all the literature, talked to domestic violence counselors, filed all the right paperwork. But knowing it and experiencing it are different things. And the people who are supposed to help, the police, the courts, they can't do anything until he actually does something. And by then, she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Adrian pulled out his phone, pulled up David Morse's photo. Is this him? Elena looked at the screen and flinched. Yes. Where did you get that? I have resources. As of 20 minutes ago, I know everything about David Morse that exists in any database. His business, his finances, his history, his patterns. Adrian put the phone away. I also know this isn't the first time he's done this. 2 ex-wives, both with similar stories. Both bought off with settlements that included silence clauses. I know about them. I tried to contact them during my divorce, but they wouldn't talk to me. Legal agreements. Those agreements have expiration dates and exceptions. I can have my lawyer look into it. Elena studied his face. Why are you doing this? Because I can. Because you need help. Because... Adrian stopped, chose his words carefully. Because I don't like men who think they can terrorize women without consequences. That's not the whole reason. No, it wasn't. Adrian didn't have a whole reason yet, just pieces of one. But Elena was looking at him with those brown eyes that saw too much, and he found himself being honest again. You reminded me of someone, he said quietly. Someone I couldn't help a long time ago. Different circumstances, but the same fear. The same exhaustion from fighting alone. He paused. I don't make the same mistake twice. Elena's expression softened. I'm sorry, for whoever that was. Don't be. Just let me help you now. She nodded slowly. Okay, what do we do? First, we document everything. Every time he contacts you, every time he shows up somewhere you are, every message, every delivery. Everything goes in a file. Second, we make your spaces more secure. Better cameras, better locks, protocols for if he approaches. Third, Adrian hesitated, knowing this part would be harder. Third, you need to accept that your normal life is going to change for a while. More awareness, more caution, more restrictions. I've already changed everything. Where I go, when I go, who I see, I'm living like a prisoner and he's the one who should be in jail. I know, it's not fair. No, it's really not. Elena's voice hardened. I left him. I followed all the rules. I did everything right, and I'm still the one who has to hide. Not for much longer. She looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means men like David Morse operate on intimidation and the assumption that no one will push back hard enough to matter. They're used to buying their way out of problems or outlasting their opponents. Adrian kept his voice level. But I'm not someone who can be intimidated or bought, and I don't get outlasted. Adrian, I don't want you to do anything illegal. I won't. Not technically, anyway. But I will make it very clear to David Morse that you're not alone anymore. That continuing to harass you comes with consequences he won't enjoy. How? Let me worry about that. Elena shook her head. No. If you're doing something on my behalf, I need to know what it is. I've spent the last 6 months trying to reclaim my life. I'm not going to hand control of it to someone else, even someone trying to help. Fair point. Adrian respected it. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a conversation with David Morse. Face to face, very civilized. I'm going to explain that you're under my protection now, and that any further harassment will be viewed as a personal insult. I'm going to make it clear that I have resources he doesn't, connections he can't match, and a reputation for following through on things I say. That's it? Just a conversation? It's never just a conversation. Not when I'm the one having it. Adrian held her gaze. Elena, in my world, reputation is currency. David Morse trades on being connected and untouchable. So do I. The difference is my reputation is built on never making threats I don't keep and never backing down from a challenge. When I tell him to leave you alone, he'll understand it's not a suggestion. And if he doesn't, then we escalate. Legally, publicly, whatever it takes. But it won't come to that. Men like him are bullies. They fold when someone actually stands up to them. Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking it through. Adrian watched her process, saw the moment she made her decision. Okay, she said, but I have one condition. What's that? I want to be there. When you talk to him, I want to look him in the face and let him know I'm not afraid anymore. Adrian started to object. Having her there complicated things, made the situation more volatile. But then he saw the set of her jaw, the determination in her eyes. This wasn't about safety. This was about reclaiming power. All right, he agreed. But you let me control the conversation. If it gets ugly, you don't engage. Deal? Deal. They shook on it, and Adrian felt the trembling was gone from her hand now. Whatever fear she'd carried into this conversation, she'd left it somewhere behind. One more thing, Adrian said. Until this is resolved, I'm putting security on you. Someone watching your building, someone following at a distance when you go out. You won't always see them, but they'll be there. That seems excessive. It's necessary. David Morse has been escalating. The flowers with the note about watching you, that's a boundary cross. He's testing to see how you'll react. I need to know you're safe while I handle this. Elena didn't look happy, but she nodded. Okay. How long? As long as it takes. She walked him to the door. As he was leaving, she touched his arm lightly. Adrian, thank you. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. You don't know what it's like to finally have someone believe you, take you seriously, actually do something. You shouldn't have had to wait this long for someone to help. No, but I'm glad it was you. After Adrian left, he sat in his car for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he called the private investigator. I need everything on David Morse, not just public records. Everything. Business dealings, personal relationships, financial irregularities, affairs, habits, addictions, secrets, anything that gives me leverage. How deep do you want me to go? As deep as necessary, and I need it in 48 hours. That's a tight timeline. Then you'd better start now. Next, Adrian called his lawyer, explained the situation, asked about the NDAs from Morse's previous marriages, what it would take to get those women to talk. Legally, those agreements are solid, the lawyer said, but there are exceptions for criminal investigations, ongoing threats to public safety. If we can establish a pattern of behavior that suggests imminent danger, we might be able to get them nullified. Work on it. Adrian, are you sure you want to go down this road? Getting involved in someone's personal situation, it's not your usual type of problem. I'm sure. All right. Your funeral. Maybe it would be, but Adrian had made his choice the moment he'd taken Elena's hand in the lounge. Everything after that was just following through. He drove home, but didn't sleep. Instead, he spent the night reading everything he could about David Morse, building a profile, finding weaknesses, planning his approach. By dawn, Adrian knew exactly how to handle the situation, and David Morse had no idea what was coming. The meeting with David Morse happened sooner than expected. Adrian had planned to wait until his investigator delivered the full report, build a complete arsenal before making contact. But Morse forced his hand 2 mornings later when Elena called at 6 a.m., her voice shaking. He was in my building last night. Adrian was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. What happened? The security footage shows him entering around midnight. He didn't come to my floor, just walked around the lobby for 10 minutes, then left. The doorman was on break. Elena's breath came unsteady. He wanted me to know he could get in, that the locks don't matter. I'm on my way. Don't open your door for anyone. Adrian, it's 6 in the morning. You don't have to. I'm already dressed. He made it to her building in 15 minutes, running 2 red lights that he'd pay tickets for later. Rachel was already there, reviewing the security footage with a building manager who looked nervous about the whole situation. "Third floor, apartment 3F, Rachel said without looking up. Building manager confirmed Morse doesn't have a key. He tailgated behind a resident. How long was he here? 9 minutes, 40 seconds. Paced the lobby, looked at the mailboxes, checked the elevator panel. Classic surveillance behavior. Adrian took the stairs to the 3rd floor, knocked on 3F. Elena opened the door immediately, still in pajamas, hair uncombed, exhaustion written across her face. "You really came." "I said I would." She let him in. The apartment was small but carefully arranged, more books than furniture, art prints on every wall. A half-empty coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter next to a phone that showed the same security footage Rachel had been reviewing. "The building manager gave me access to the cameras," Elena explained. "I've been watching it on repeat, trying to figure out what he was doing." Adrian took the phone, watched the footage himself. Morse moved through the lobby with the confidence of someone who knew he wouldn't be stopped. Stopped at the mailboxes, ran his hand along them like he was looking for something specific, checked his watch twice, looked directly at the camera once, and smiled. That smile told Adrian everything he needed to know. This wasn't about Elena anymore. This was about Morse establishing dominance, proving he could reach her anywhere. "He knows I'm watching," Elena said quietly. "That smile wasn't for me. It was for whoever I showed this to. He's saying he doesn't care." "Good." Elena looked at him sharply. "How is that good?" "Because arrogance makes people sloppy. He thinks he's untouchable, which means he'll keep pushing boundaries. And every time he pushes, he gives us more ammunition." Adrian handed back the phone. "But we're not waiting for him to make the next move. We're going to him. Today." "Are you serious?" "Completely. He wants to play intimidation games. We'll show him what real intimidation looks like." Adrian pulled out his own phone, made a call. "I need David Morse's schedule for today. Where is he? Where is he going? When can I find him alone?" The answer came back in under 3 minutes. Morse had a business lunch at the Meridian Club at noon, a private establishment that catered to Chicago's business elite. Members only, security at the door, the kind of place where deals happened over $18 cocktails and $100 steaks. Adrian was a member, had been for 8 years. "Get dressed," he told Elena. "Something professional. We're having lunch." "At the Meridian? I can't just walk in there." "You can as my guest. We'll be waiting when he arrives." Elena stared at him. "You want to confront him in public? In front of his business associates?" "I want him to understand that hiding behind social niceties and club memberships won't protect him. That I can reach him anywhere, just like he's been proving he can reach you." Adrian met her eyes. "But only if you're comfortable with this. If it's too much, I'll go alone." "No." Elena's voice steadied. "I want to be there. I need to be there." "Then we leave in 2 hours. That gives me time to make arrangements." The arrangements involved 3 calls and 1 text. First, to the club manager, confirming his reservation and adding a guest. Second, to Marco, explaining the situation and having him position people at the exits. Third, to his lawyer, having him prepare documentation that would be delivered during the conversation. The text was to Rachel, simple and direct. "Stay on Elena's building. I need to know if Morse comes back while we're gone." At 11:30, Adrian picked up Elena from her apartment. She'd chosen a navy dress with a structured blazer, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked nervous but determined. "I've never done anything like this before," she admitted as they drove. "What? Confronted your abusive ex at an exclusive business club?" A small laugh escaped her. "That's one way to put it. I meant standing up to him in general. Every time I tried before, he found a way to turn it around. Make me feel crazy, like I was overreacting. That's what men like him do. Gaslighting is cheaper than accountability." Adrian navigated through downtown traffic. "But he can't gaslight both of us. And he definitely can't gaslight documentation and witnesses. What if he makes a scene? Then he makes a scene in front of people who matter to his business reputation. Either way, he loses." They arrived at the Meridian at 11:50. The club occupied the top 3 floors of a building that had been old money when Adrian's grandfather was young. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, oil paintings of men whose names nobody remembered but whose money still spoke. The host recognized Adrian immediately. Mr. Vale, your table is ready, and the package you requested has been placed in the private room. Thank you, Marcus. Will you be dining in the main room or… Main room. I want to be visible. Marcus didn't ask questions. After 8 years, he knew Adrian well enough to understand when business was being conducted. They were seated at a table with a clear view of the entrance. Adrian ordered coffee for both of them. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. What if this makes everything worse? She asked quietly. It won't. You can't know that. I can, because right now Morse thinks he's in control. He thinks he can terrorize you without consequences. After today, he'll know different, and men like him, when they realize they're not in control anymore, they either back off or escalate so badly that the authorities finally take action. Either way, you win. Unless he hurts me first. Adrian's voice went cold. He won't get the chance. At 12:05, David Morse entered the club. He was everything Adrian had expected from the file. Tall, athletic build, going soft around the middle, expensive suit that almost disguised it. The kind of handsome that had probably opened doors when he was younger but now looked practiced. He moved with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no by the right people. He was with 2 other men, business types, all talking and laughing about something. He didn't notice Adrian and Elena until he was 3 steps past their table. Then he saw Elena. His whole body went rigid. The smile dropped. For just a second, something ugly flashed across his face before he controlled it. Elena. Her name came out surprised, but Adrian heard the calculation underneath. What are you doing here? Elena set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. Having lunch. At the Meridian? Morse's eyes flicked to Adrian, dismissive. I didn't know you knew anyone here. You don't know a lot of things about me, David. That's kind of the point of divorce. Morse's companions had stopped, sensing tension. One of them touched Morse's arm. David, we should… Give me a minute. Morse didn't take his eyes off Elena. This is my wife. Ex-wife, Elena corrected. Almost. The papers aren't final. They will be in 3 weeks. Your lawyer confirmed it. Adrian had remained silent, watching the dynamic. Now he stood, drawing Morse's attention fully for the first time. David Morse, Adrian said, not offering his hand. Adrian Vale, I believe we should talk. Recognition flickered in Morse's eyes. He knew the name. Everyone in Chicago business circles knew the name. I don't believe we have anything to discuss, Mr. Vale. I disagree. Shall we sit, or would you prefer to have this conversation in front of your lunch companions? Morse glanced at the 2 men, both looking increasingly uncomfortable. Go ahead to the table. I'll join you in a moment. They left quickly, grateful for the escape. Morse remained standing, trying to maintain the high ground through physical positioning. Adrian didn't care. He'd have this conversation standing if necessary. You've been harassing Elena, Adrian said quietly, his voice pitched so only the 3 of them could hear. Following her, watching her, entering her building without permission. That stops today. Morse's jaw tightened. I don't know what she's told you, but security footage doesn't lie. Neither do timestamps, witness statements, or the florist delivery records that show you've sent flowers to her workplace 3 times in the past month. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed a screenshot. This is you in her building lobby at 12:14 a.m. last Tuesday. You don't live there. You don't have permission to be there. That's trespassing. I was visiting a friend in the building. Name them. Morse's hesitation was answer enough. That's what I thought. Adrian put away his phone. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Elena alone. Completely. No more following, no more flowers, no more showing up places she is. No contact of any kind unless it's through lawyers regarding the divorce. You can't tell me what to do. I'm not telling you. I'm explaining consequences. Adrian's voice stayed level, almost pleasant. If you contact Elena again in any way, I will make it my personal mission to dismantle every aspect of your life. Business, reputation, social standing. I'll bury you so deep you'll need a map to find daylight. Morse's face flushed. You're threatening me? I'm promising you. Adrian held his gaze. I've looked into your business, David. West Loop Development Group. Interesting portfolio. Especially that project on Harrison Street. The one with the zoning variance that came through remarkably fast. Would be a shame if someone looked closely at how that happened. The color drained from Morse's face. Bullseye. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have exact idea what I'm talking about. Just like I know about the LLC you set up in Delaware to hide assets from the divorce settlement. Just like I know about the complaints from female employees that your company settled quietly. Adrian leaned in slightly. I know everything, David. Every corner you've cut, every rule you've bent, every person you've paid off to make problems disappear. And if you don't leave Elena alone, all of it becomes public. This is blackmail. No, this is information sharing. Blackmail would be if I demanded something from you. I'm not demanding anything except that you follow the law and respect the restraining order. That seems reasonable. Morse looked at Elena, and something desperate entered his expression. Elena, you can't be okay with this. With him. I'm more than okay with it. Elena's voice was steady now, stronger than Adrian had heard it. For 6 months, I've been terrified of you. Changing my life to avoid you. Hiding. You made me feel powerless, and you enjoyed it. That's not... Don't! Elena stood facing him directly. Don't lie. Don't gaslight. Don't pretend this was anything other than what it was. You wanted me to suffer because I left you, because I chose myself over you. Well, I'm not suffering anymore. I'm not hiding, and I'm not afraid. You should be. The words came out before Morse could stop them, his mask slipping completely. Adrian moved between them in one smooth motion, his hand not quite touching Morse's chest, but the threat implicit. What did you just say? Morse realized his mistake. I didn't mean, you just threatened her, in front of me, in a room full of witnesses. Adrian's voice went deadly quiet. Thank you. That makes everything much simpler. I wasn't threatening. I was just... Marcus. Adrian raised his voice slightly, and the host appeared immediately. Please make sure Mr. Morse's words just now are noted in the club's incident report. He just verbally threatened Ms. Hart in front of multiple witnesses. Marcus nodded professionally. Of course, Mr. Vale. I'll prepare the documentation. Morse looked around wildly. Several other diners were watching now, attracted by the tension. His lunch companions were studiously looking at their menus, pretending not to notice. This is insane, Morse said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You can't... I already have. Adrian pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. This is a cease and desist letter prepared by my attorney. It documents every instance of harassment, every violation of the restraining order, every threat implied or explicit. One more incident, and we file for a criminal protective order. Given the evidence we've compiled, it will be granted. Morse didn't take the envelope. I don't have to accept this. You're right, you don't. Adrian set it on the table. But it's now witnessed that you were served, so legally, it doesn't matter if you take it or not. For a long moment, Morse just stood there, trapped. Adrian could see him calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to salvage control. But there wasn't one. Not here. Not now. You're making a mistake, Morse said finally, the threat hollow. No, David. You made the mistake. I'm just correcting it. Adrian gestured toward Morse's waiting companions. Your lunch is getting cold. Morse looked at Elena one more time, something ugly and desperate in his eyes. Then he turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff with barely controlled rage. Elena didn't sit down until he was gone. When she did, she was shaking. I can't believe I just did that, she whispered. You were perfect. I thought I was going to throw up. But you didn't. You stood your ground. Adrian signaled for more coffee. How do you feel? Elena considered the question. Terrified. Relieved. Powerful. Like I might actually cry. She laughed shakily. Is this normal? For confronting an abuser? Yes. All of those feelings make sense. He looked so angry, like he wanted to hurt me right there. He did want to hurt you, but he couldn't because for the first time you weren't alone and vulnerable. You had backup. He's not used to that. They stayed for another 20 minutes, long enough to drink their coffee and let Elena's hands stop shaking. Across the room, Morse's lunch was clearly miserable. His companions kept glancing over, probably asking questions he couldn't answer. As they were leaving, Marcus approached with a leather folder. Mr. Vale, the incident report. It includes statements from 3 staff members who overheard Mr. Morse's threat. Thank you, Marcus. Please have a copy sent to my attorney. Already done, sir. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright after the club's dim interior. Elena stood on the sidewalk, just breathing. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. See if Morse is smart enough to back off. And if he's not, then we follow through on everything I promised. Adrian looked at her seriously. Elena, I need you to understand something. What I said in there wasn't a bluff. If Morse contacts you again, I will destroy him. Legally, financially, socially, I have the resources and the will to do it, but it won't be clean and it won't be quiet. Are you prepared for that? Elena met his eyes. Will it keep me safe? Yes. Then yes, I'm prepared. They drove back to her apartment in silence. When they arrived, Rachel was waiting in the lobby. Building's clear, she reported. No activity since you left. Good. Maintain surveillance. I want to know the moment Morse shows up anywhere near here. Copy that. Elena turned to Adrian as they reached her door. Do you want to come in? I feel like I should offer you something after everything you just did. You don't owe me anything. I know, but I'm offering anyway. She managed a small smile. I make really good coffee, better than the Meridians. Adrian knew he should say no, should maintain professional distance, should treat this like any other problem he'd solved, but he found himself nodding. All right, but just coffee. Elena's apartment looked different in daylight. The books were eclectic. Art history next to thriller novels next to poetry collections. The prints on the walls were originals, small pieces by artists Adrian didn't recognize. Everything chosen with care, with meaning. You restore paintings, Adrian said, studying one of the prints. Do you paint yourself? I used to. Not anymore. Elena was in the kitchen, grinding coffee beans. David didn't like it, said it was a waste of time, that I should focus on work that actually made money. After a while, I just stopped. That's another thing you can start again, now that he's not controlling you. Maybe. She poured water into a French press. It's strange, you know. I left him 6 months ago, but I'm still living by his rules, still afraid to do things he wouldn't approve of, still hearing his voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough. That voice gets quieter. Takes time, but it does. Elena brought over 2 mugs, sat across from him in a worn armchair. You sound like you speak from experience. Different circumstances, but yes. Will you tell me about it? Adrian hadn't planned to. Didn't talk about his past with anyone except Marco, and even then, only in fragments. But something about Elena, the way she'd stood up to Morse, the way she was fighting to reclaim herself, made him want to share. My mother, he said finally. She was with a man who hurt her, physically, emotionally, financially. I was 12 when it started, 15 when it ended. I tried to protect her, tried to make her leave, but she wouldn't. She loved him, or thought she did. Or maybe she was just too tired to fight. What happened? He went too far one night. Put her in the hospital. Finally, she pressed charges, got a restraining order, did everything right. And then he killed her anyway. Shot her in a grocery store parking lot 3 weeks later. Adrian's voice stayed flat, factual, the only way he could tell it. He died in prison 2 years into his sentence. Someone shanked him over a poker debt. I didn't mourn. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm so sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. I'm just telling you so you understand why I take this seriously. Why I'm not going to let Morse hurt you the way that man hurt my mother. You couldn't have saved her, Adrian. You were 50. I know that, logically. But it doesn't change the feeling. He took a drink of coffee. Elena was right. It was better than the Meridians. After she died, I ended up in foster care for a few years. Not great, not terrible. Learned to fight, learned to survive, learned to read people. Then I joined the Army right at 18. Spent 6 years doing things I don't talk about. When I got out, I used my skills to start consulting. What kind of consulting? The kind where people have problems they can't solve through normal channels, and they pay me to make those problems disappear. Adrian held her gaze. I'm not going to lie to you about what I do, Elena. I operate in gray areas. I bend rules. I use leverage and intimidation and whatever tools work. I'm not a good man. I think you're better than you believe you are. Don't make me into something I'm not. I'm helping you because I choose to, but I've hurt people, destroyed lives, made decisions that kept me up at night. He paused. You should know that before you trust me too much. Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, when I was married to David, he used to tell me all the time that he was a good man, that he only hurt me because I made him angry, that if I just tried harder, he'd be better. He wrapped every cruel thing he did in language about love and protection and good intentions. She set down her coffee mug. "You're not telling me you're good. You're telling me exactly what you are and letting me decide if I can live with it. That's more honesty than I got in 4 years of marriage." Elena met his eyes. "So yes, Adrian, I trust you. Maybe more because you're honest about your flaws than I would if you pretended not to have any." Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Wasn't used to being seen so clearly. His phone buzzed. A text from his investigator. "Full report on Morse complete. You're going to want to see this. Sending now." "I need to go," Adrian said, standing. "Something's come up with the investigation." "Did they find something?" "I'll know in a few minutes. I'll call you once I've reviewed it." Elena walked him to the door. As he was leaving, she touched his arm lightly. "Adrian, thank you for today, for telling me about your mother, for being honest. Get some rest and keep your door locked." "I will." Adrian left, nodding to Rachel on his way out. In his car, he opened the email from the investigator, started reading, and with each paragraph, his expression grew colder. David Morse was worse than Adrian had thought. Much worse. The 2 previous ex-wives were just the start. There were 3 other women who'd filed complaints that had been settled quietly. One had ended up in the hospital, another had left the state and changed her name. The third had simply disappeared from public records, which suggested she'd been paid enough to vanish completely. Morse's business was built on corruption. The zoning variance Adrian had mentioned was one of 7 questionable approvals, all tied to officials who'd received campaign contributions or consulting fees from Morse's various LLCs. His company had been investigated twice for discriminatory hiring practices and once for financial fraud. Every investigation had been dropped after settlements or interventions from expensive lawyers. But the worst part was the pattern. Morse didn't just harass his ex-partners, he destroyed them, systematically. One woman had lost her job after Morse spread rumors about her mental stability. Another had her professional license suspended after anonymous complaints. A third had been evicted from her apartment when Morse bought the building through a shell company. This wasn't just an angry ex, this was a predator with resources and a system. Adrian called his lawyer immediately. "I'm sending you a file. I need you to review everything and tell me what we can use legally." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that I'm considering options beyond legal." "Adrian, don't worry. I'm not going to do anything stupid, but I need to know every weapon we have before Morse makes his next move." "You think he will?" "I know he will. Men like him don't back down from public humiliation. They double down." Adrian pulled into traffic. "I just need to be ready when he does." That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He kept seeing his mother's face the day she'd gotten the restraining order, how hopeful she'd been that it would finally be over. He'd believed it too. They both had. 3 weeks later, she was dead. At 2 a.m., his phone rang. Rachel's voice was tense. "We have a problem." "What happened?" "Morse just pulled up to Elena's building. He's sitting in his car across the street. Has been for 20 minutes. Adrian was already moving, grabbing his keys. "Is he alone?" "As far as I can tell, he's just sitting there, watching her window." "Do not approach him. Just keep eyes on. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Adrian made it in 8, parking 2 blocks away and approaching on foot. Rachel was in a coffee shop with a clear view of Elena's building. She gestured toward a black Mercedes parked across the street. Through the tinted windows, Adrian could just make out Morse's silhouette. "How long has he been there?" 27 minutes now." "Has he tried to enter the building?" "No, just sitting, watching." Adrian pulled out his phone, called the non-emergency police line. "I'd like to report a possible stalking situation. There's a man sitting in a car outside my friend's building. He has a restraining order against him and is currently violating it." He gave them the address, the license plate, Elena's apartment number. The dispatcher said they'd send someone to check it out. "How long until they arrive?" Rachel asked. "Could be minutes, could be an hour. Depends on how busy they are." Adrian kept his eyes on Morse's car. "But he doesn't know they're coming, and he doesn't know we're watching." 12 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. 2 officers got out, approached Morse's vehicle. There was a conversation Adrian couldn't hear. Morse gestured animatedly. The officers remained calm but firm. After 5 minutes, Morse drove away. The officers stayed for a few more minutes, then left as well. Adrian's phone rang, the non-emergency line calling back. "Mr. Vale, this is Officer Chen. We spoke to the individual. He claims he was just making a phone call and happened to park there. We couldn't verify a restraining order violation since he didn't approach the building or attempt contact. But he was there, outside her home, at 2 in the morning. I understand, sir, and we've documented the incident. If he returns or attempts contact, that documentation will support a pattern of behavior. But we can't arrest someone for sitting in a parked car on a public street. Adrian hung up, frustrated but not surprised. The system wasn't designed to stop people like Morse. It was designed to react after they'd already done damage. He texted Elena. Morse was outside your building tonight. Police moved him along. You're safe, but I wanted you to know. Her response came back immediately. Can't sleep anyway. Thank you for watching out for me. Always. Adrian stayed for another hour, making sure Morse didn't return. Then he drove home and spent the rest of the night reading the investigator's report again, looking for any detail he might have missed. By dawn, he'd made his decision. David Morse had one last chance to walk away, and if he didn't take it, Adrian would make sure he regretted every choice that had led him to this point. The invitation arrived 3 days later, delivered to Adrian's office by courier. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, the kind of formal pretension that Chicago's elite loved. Marco dropped it on Adrian's desk. Gala invitation, the Sinclair Foundation's annual fundraiser, black tie, $500 a plate, all the usual suspects. Adrian barely glanced at it. Pass. Elena Hart's name is on the guest list. That got his attention. Adrian picked up the invitation, scanned it properly. The Sinclair Foundation supported arts education and restoration programs. Made sense that Elena would be invited. What didn't make sense was the timing. How did you get the guest list? Rachel pulled it. She thought you'd want to know. Marco leaned against the doorframe. Morse is also attending, with a +1. Adrian set down the invitation carefully. When is it? Saturday night, 3 days from now. Get me a ticket and find out who Morse's +1 is. Marco nodded and left. Adrian sat back in his chair, thinking through the angles. A public event, hundreds of witnesses, cameras everywhere. Morse wouldn't try anything overt. But he'd use it as an opportunity to establish presence, to remind Elena that he could move in her circles, that she couldn't escape him even in professional spaces. Unless Adrian was there first. He called Elena. She answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. Hey, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back? Are you going to the Sinclair Gala on Saturday? A pause. How did you know about that? I have the guest list. Are you going? I wasn't planning to. The foundation invited me because of the museum work, but galas aren't really my thing. Too many people, too much small talk. She hesitated. Why? Morse is attending. The silence stretched longer this time. When Elena spoke again, her voice was tight. Of course he is. He never went to these things when we were married. Said they were boring, but now that I might be there, he's using it to get close to you. Legal, public, impossible to call harassment because you're both just attending the same event. So I don't go. Problem solved. Or you go with me, and we make it clear that his presence doesn't control your choices. Adrian kept his voice even. Your call, but I think you should go. This is your professional community. You shouldn't have to avoid it because of him. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Adrian could hear something in the background, classical music playing softly. You're right. I hate that you're right, but you are. I can't keep letting him dictate where I can and can't be. So you'll go? If you're there, yes. I don't think I can handle it alone. You won't be alone. I'll arrange everything. After hanging up, Adrian made a series of calls. First to his tailor, ordering a new tuxedo because the gala demanded it. Second, to the event organizers, confirming his attendance and requesting a table change that would position him near Elena, but not obviously so. Third, to Rachel, outlining security protocols for the evening. You want security at a charity gala? Rachel sounded skeptical. I want eyes on Morse the entire night. If he approaches Elena, I want to know before he gets within 10 feet. This is getting complicated, boss. I'm aware. Are you sure this is still just about protection? Adrian didn't answer immediately. The question had been lurking in the back of his mind for days, ever since he danced with Elena in the lounge, since he'd seen her stand up to Morse at the Meridian, since he'd spent 2 a.m. watching her building to make sure she was safe. I'm sure it's the right thing to do, he said finally. That's all that matters. Rachel made a sound that suggested she didn't entirely believe him, but she didn't push. I'll have people in place. Discreet. Saturday arrived faster than Adrian expected. He spent the afternoon reviewing files on a completely unrelated business matter, trying to focus on anything except the evening ahead. Marco appeared at 4 with the tuxedo, already pressed and ready. Elena's dress is being delivered to her apartment at 5, Marco said, courtesy of Madeline's on Oak Street. I took the liberty of having them select something appropriate. Adrian looked up sharply. You bought her a dress? You said arrange everything. A $500 a plate gala requires a certain level of presentation. I figured she might not have something suitable on short notice. Marco shrugged. If I overstepped, I'll cancel it. Adrian considered. Elena probably wouldn't appreciate the gesture, might see it as controlling or presumptuous. But Marco was right about the dress code. These events were brutal about appearances. Let it go through, but make sure the note says it's optional, just an offer if she needs it. Already done. At 6:30, Adrian's car pulled up to Elena's building. She was waiting in the lobby, and when she stepped outside, Adrian forgot how to breathe for a second. The dress was deep emerald green, simple but elegant, fitted in a way that suggested confidence rather than display. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves past her shoulders. Minimal jewelry, just small diamond earrings that caught the light. She looked like someone who belonged at these events, like someone who'd never been afraid a day in her life. Is it too much? Elena asked as she slid into the car. Marco's note said I could return it if I didn't like it, but I didn't have anything else that felt right, and I figured, you look perfect. Elena blinked, then smiled. You clean up pretty well yourself. The drive to the gala venue took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. The event was being held at the Blackstone Hotel, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers and old money elegance. Valets rushed to open doors, photographers clustered on the red carpet, guests arrived in expensive cars and expensive clothes. Adrian offered Elena his arm as they walked in. She took it, her hand trembling slightly. Breathe, he murmured. Just another night. With my abusive ex somewhere in this crowd and 100 people I need to impress professionally. Sure, just another night. Despite the tension, Adrian smiled. There's the fighting spirit. The ballroom was exactly what Adrian expected. Round tables draped in white linens, centerpieces dripping with orchids, a small orchestra playing something classical and forgettable. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that cost more than they looked worth. Everyone dressed to impress. Everyone smiling too much. Everyone pretending this was about charity rather than networking. Adrian scanned the room automatically, cataloging exits and potential threats. Rachel was positioned near the bar, dressed like a guest but alert. 2 more of his people were scattered throughout the crowd, invisible unless you knew what to look for. And there, near the far corner, talking to a cluster of business types, was David Morse. He'd brought a woman, young, blonde, hanging on his arm like an accessory. She laughed too loud at something he said, drawing attention. Morse noticed the looks, seemed pleased by them. Elena saw them at the same moment. Her hand tightened on Adrian's arm. He brought someone, she said quietly. He's already dating someone new. He's putting on a show, trying to prove he's moved on, that you don't matter. Adrian guided her toward their table. Don't give him the satisfaction of reacting. Their table included a museum director, 2 art collectors, a philanthropist who funded restoration programs, and a corporate sponsor whose company name Elena recognized from her contracts. Everyone was polite, interested in Elena's work, asking intelligent questions about restoration techniques and challenges. Elena relaxed gradually, falling into comfortable conversation about art and preservation. Adrian watched her come alive, talking about a 15th century fresco she'd helped save, her eyes bright with genuine passion. This was her element, not the gala itself, but the work behind it. Morse watched from across the room. Adrian caught him staring twice, his expression unreadable. Dinner was served in courses, each more elaborate than necessary. Adrian barely tasted his food, too focused on monitoring the room. Morse had changed tables between courses, working the crowd, making sure he was visible and well-connected. His date followed him like a shadow, contributing nothing to conversations but looking appropriately decorative. Between the main course and dessert, the orchestra shifted to something slower. Couples began moving to the small dance floor in the center of the ballroom. Would you like to dance? Adrian asked Elena. She looked uncertain. I'm not very good at this kind of dancing. Neither am I. But everyone else is doing it, and it gives us a reason to move around the room. You mean it lets you keep an eye on Morse without being obvious? That too. Elena laughed, some of the tension breaking. Okay, but don't blame me if I step on your feet. They moved to the dance floor. Adrian's hand settled at her waist, hers on his shoulder, and they found a rhythm that was awkward at first, but gradually steadied. Around them, other couples swayed to the music, lost in their own conversations. This is surreal, Elena said after a moment. A month ago, I was hiding in my apartment, terrified David would show up. Now, I'm at a gala, dancing, pretending everything is normal. It's not pretending. This is normal. He's the aberration. Doesn't feel that way. Feels like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoe already dropped. We're just waiting to see how he reacts to picking it up. Adrian guided her through a turn, keeping his movement simple. How are you holding up? Really? Scared, angry, tired. Elena met his eyes. But also something else, something I haven't felt in a long time. What's that? Hope. Like maybe this actually ends, like maybe I get my life back. Before Adrian could respond, someone tapped his shoulder. He turned to find David Morse standing there, his date nowhere in sight. Mind if I cut in? Morse's smile was all teeth, no warmth. I'd like to dance with my wife. Ex-wife, Elena said immediately. And no. One dance, Elena, for old times. I said no. Morse's smile tightened. I'm trying to be civilized here. We're both adults. Surely we can have one conversation without your guard dog present. Adrian's voice went cold. She said no. Walk away. This is between Elena and me. Nothing is between you and Elena anymore. You lost that privilege when you started stalking her. Adrian shifted slightly, positioning himself more directly between them. This is your last warning. Leave. People were starting to notice. Conversations paused, heads turned. Morse seemed to realize he was making a scene, that pushing further would damage his carefully constructed image. This isn't over, he muttered, low enough that only Adrian and Elena could hear. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Morse retreated, rejoining his date at the bar. But the damage was done. Elena was shaking again, the fear back in her eyes. I need some air, she said quietly. Adrian led her off the dance floor, through the crowd, toward a side exit that opened onto a terrace. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't started falling yet. Chicago spread below them, all lights and movement and indifferent life. I'm sorry, Elena said, wrapping her arms around herself. I thought I could handle seeing him, but when he came over, when he said my wife, like I still belonged to him, her voice cracked. I can't do this. Yes, you can. You already did. You stood up to him, said no, didn't let him touch you. Adrian shrugged off his jacket, draped it over her shoulders. That took courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Adrenaline crash. Adrian kept his voice calm, steady. Just breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're safe. He can't hurt you here. Elena followed his instructions, breathing slowly until the shaking eased. When she looked up, tears were sliding down her cheeks, ruining her carefully applied makeup. I hate this, she whispered. I hate that he still has this power over me. I hate that I can't just move on. You are moving on. It just doesn't happen all at once. Adrian pulled out his handkerchief, offered it to her. Trauma doesn't have a timeline. Neither does healing. Elena wiped her eyes, laughed shakily. Who carries handkerchiefs anymore? People who attend too many formal events. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Rachel appeared, her expression urgent. We have a problem. Adrian stepped away from Elena. What kind of problem? Morse is telling people that Elena's unstable, that she's been harassing him, that she fabricated the abuse allegations to get a better divorce settlement. Rachel's voice was tight with controlled anger. He's spinning a whole story, making himself the victim. Son of a... Adrian bit off the curse, glanced at Elena. Her face had gone white. People are going to believe him, Elena said hollowly. He's charming, connected, credible. I'm the crazy ex-wife who can't let go. No one who matters will believe him, Adrian said firmly. But we need to get ahead of this. Now. He pulled out his phone, called his lawyer. I need you to release a statement to the media tonight. Include the police reports, the restraining order, the incident at the Meridian, the security footage from Elena's building, everything. Make it public. Adrian, that's nuclear. Once we go public with this, there's no walking it back. I know. Do it anyway. It'll hit the news cycle by morning. Morse's reputation will be destroyed. That's the point. Adrian kept his eyes on Elena. He wants to play the victim. We'll show everyone exactly what kind of victim he is. After ending the call, Adrian turned to Rachel. I need you to do something for me. Name it. Find Morse's date. The woman he brought tonight. I want to know who she is, how long they've been together, and if she has any idea what kind of man she's with. Rachel's eyes widened slightly. You think she's in danger? I think Morse's pattern suggests he doesn't stop until he's forced to stop. If he's already moved on to someone new, she deserves to know what she's walking into. I'll find her. After Rachel left, Adrian turned back to Elena. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You just declared war on him, she said, on my behalf. He declared war first. I'm just making sure he loses. Adrian, this is going to get ugly, really ugly. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He meant it. Somewhere over the past few weeks, this had stopped being about protecting a stranger and started being about something deeper. Something that scared him if he looked at it too closely. But I need to know you're okay with this. Once we go public, there's no taking it back. Elena took a shaky breath, then nodded. Do it. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of letting him control the narrative. If going public means he finally faces consequences, then yes, do it. They went back inside together. The gala was still in full swing, but the energy had changed. People were clustered in small groups, talking in hushed tones. Morse was holding court near the bar, his performance as the wronged man apparently going well. Adrian caught Marco's eye across the room, made a subtle gesture. Marco nodded, slipped away. Within minutes, he'd return with backup documentation, witness statements, everything they'd need to counter Morse's lies. But before any of that could happen, the lights flickered. It wasn't dramatic, just a brief interruption that most people barely noticed. But Adrian felt something shift in the air, a tension that raised the hair on the back of his neck. Rachel appeared at his side, her face grim. Someone just cut the security camera feeds, all of them. Adrian's hand found Elena's elbow, gripping tight. Where's Morse? Lost him in the crowd about 30 seconds ago. Every instinct, Adrian had screamed danger. He scanned the ballroom, looking for Morse's distinctive profile, his blonde date, anything. Then he saw her. The date, standing alone near the dessert table, looking confused and slightly annoyed. Morse had left her. Find him, Adrian said to Rachel. Now. She disappeared into the crowd. Adrian pulled Elena closer, speaking quietly but urgently. Stay with me. Don't drink anything. Don't accept anything from anyone. Don't go anywhere alone. You're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Be alert. Adrian kept scanning the room. Something's wrong. A waiter appeared at Elena's elbow, offering champagne on a silver tray. Adrian waved him off, but the waiter persisted. Compliments of the Foundation, the waiter said, gesturing to a specific glass. For Ms. Hart. Elena reached for it automatically. Adrian caught her wrist. Who sent this specifically? The waiter looked uncomfortable. A gentleman asked me to deliver it to Ms. Hart. Said it was a congratulations for her restoration work. What gentleman? I don't know his name, sir. He's no longer in the room. Adrian took the glass himself, held it up to the light. The champagne looked normal, bubbles rising steadily. But something felt wrong. Rachel, he called, spotting her near the edge of the crowd. I need this tested. Now. She took the glass without question, disappeared. The waiter stammered apologies, clearly not understanding what was happening. Adrian ignored him, focused entirely on Elena. Did you drink anything tonight? Eat anything I didn't see you eat? Just what was served at our table. Why? What's going on? Before Adrian could answer, Rachel was back, her face pale. Rohypnol, she said quietly. Date rape drug. Enough to knock someone out for hours. The ballroom seemed to tilt. Adrian forced himself to stay calm, to think clearly through the rage building in his chest. Where is Morse? Outside, getting into his car. Adrian was already moving, pulling Elena with him. Get her somewhere safe. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Marco. Where are you going? To have a conversation. He left Elena with Rachel and two other security personnel, then headed for the exit. Marco fell in step beside him, not asking questions, just ready. They found Morse's car still in the parking circle, the valet just handing over the keys. Morse was alone, his date apparently left behind inside. Adrian walked straight up to him. We need to talk. Morse turned, and for just a second, his mask slipped. Adrian saw calculation there, malice, the expression of a predator who'd been caught mid-hunt. Then the mask was back. I have nothing to say to you. That drink you sent Elena, the one with rohypnol in it, that was a mistake. Morse's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. You paid a waiter to deliver poisoned champagne to Elena. We have the glass, we have the waiter's testimony, and we have security footage of you talking to him. Adrian stepped closer. You just committed felony assault at a charity gala in front of 500 witnesses. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. The question is whether I go to the police or handle this myself. Fear flickered in Morse's eyes. Real fear, not the performative kind. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. You can deal with me, or you can deal with the criminal justice system. But either way, your life as you know it is over. Morse's hand shook as he unlocked his car. This isn't legal. You can't. I already have. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed Morse the screen. It displayed a news article, already published online. Your arrest record from college that got expunged. Your history of settlements with former employees. The restraining orders from both ex-wives. The zoning fraud. All of it. Public as of 10 minutes ago. Morse stared at the screen, his face draining of color. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Chicago will have this story, Adrian continued. Your business partners will distance themselves. Your projects will lose funding. Your reputation will be destroyed. He paused. Unless you do exactly what I say. Which is what? You finalize Elena's divorce immediately. You give her everything she's asking for in the settlement. You sign a legally binding agreement to never contact her again, and you leave Chicago, permanently. I can't just leave. Your business is about to collapse anyway. Take whatever you can liquidate and start over somewhere else. Somewhere far away from Elena. Morse looked at him with naked hatred. You can't force me to leave the city. No. But I can make staying here so unbearable that you'll want to leave. I can ruin every business deal you touch. I can make sure every door you knock on gets slammed in your face. I can turn you into a pariah. Adrian's voice was ice. Or you can take the out I'm offering and rebuild somewhere else. Your choice. For a long moment, Morse just stood there, trapped. Then something in him cracked. You think you've won, he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You think you've saved her, but you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. Elena is broken, damaged. She'll drag you down with her the same way she tried to drag me down. Adrian hit him. Not hard enough to do real damage, just enough to split Morse's lip and send him stumbling back against his car. The valet yelped and backed away. Marco grabbed Adrian's arm, holding him back from following through. Don't, Marco said quietly. He's not worth it. Adrian knew Marco was right, but seeing Morse bleeding, scared, finally understanding he'd lost. It felt better than it probably should. You have 48 hours, Adrian said, forcing his voice level. Sign the papers, leave town, or I release the rest of what I have on you. And trust me, what's public now is just the beginning. He walked away before he could do something he'd regret. Marco stayed behind, making sure Morse actually left, then joined Adrian at the entrance. You okay? No. Adrian's hand was throbbing where he'd connected with Morse's face. But I will be. They went back inside. Rachel had moved Elena to a private room off the main ballroom, away from the crowd. When Adrian entered, Elena stood immediately. Did you find him? Yes. And? And he's leaving Chicago, permanently. Adrian's voice was flat, still processing what had just happened. It's over. Elena stared at him. Just like that? Just like that. She started crying. Not scared crying, not sad crying, relief crying, the kind that came from somewhere deep and couldn't be stopped. Adrian crossed the room, pulled her into his arms, and let her fall apart. It's It's really over? She asked against his chest. It's really over. They stood like that for a long time, long enough that the gala ended and guests began trickling out, long enough that Rachel discreetly closed the door and stationed herself outside, long enough that Adrian realized this feeling in his chest wasn't just protective instinct anymore. It was something else entirely, something that terrified him more than Morse ever had. When Elena finally pulled away, her makeup was completely ruined and Adrian's shirt was damp from her tears. She laughed shakily, wiping at her eyes with the heels of her hands. I'm a mess. You're allowed to be. I got mascara all over your shirt. I have others. Adrian studied her face, saw exhaustion and relief in something fragile taking root. Come on, let's get you home. The drive back was quiet. Elena sat with her head against the window, watching the city slide past, processing everything that had happened. Adrian left her to her thoughts, making calls to tie up loose ends. His lawyer confirmed the divorce papers would be ready for Morse's signature by Monday morning. Rachel reported that Morse had indeed left the gala immediately after their confrontation. Marco was already pulling together documentation for the police report about the drugged champagne. Everything was falling into place, the kind of clean resolution Adrian specialized in. Problem identified, solution implemented, threat neutralized. So why did he feel like something was still wrong? They reached Elena's building just after midnight. Adrian walked her to her door, waited while she fumbled with her keys. Thank you, Elena said, not looking at him. For everything tonight, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. I do, though. You didn't have to get involved, didn't have to put yourself at risk, spend your resources, make yourself a target. But you did. She finally met his eyes. Why? Adrian didn't have a good answer, or rather, he had several answers and none of them felt complete. Because she reminded him of his mother, because he hated men like Morse, because she'd asked him to dance and something in him had shifted, because somewhere along the way, protecting her had stopped being a job and started being personal. Get some sleep, he said instead. We'll talk tomorrow. Elena nodded, started to go inside, then paused. Adrian? Will you stay? Just for a while. I don't think I can be alone tonight. Every reasonable part of Adrian's brain said no, said this was crossing a line, getting too close, mixing protection with something more complicated. But he heard the tremor in her voice, saw the fear still lurking behind her relief, and found himself nodding. I'll stay. Elena's apartment felt different at night, quieter, more intimate. She went to change out of the dress while Adrian removed his jacket and tie, trying to get comfortable in formal wear that suddenly felt restrictive. She emerged in sweatpants and an oversized shirt, hair pulled back, face scrubbed clean. This version of Elena, vulnerable, unguarded, hit Adrian harder than the polished woman at the gala. I'm gonna make tea, she said. Do you want anything? Tea's fine. Adrian sat on her couch while she moved around the small kitchen, the domestic ritual clearly helping her settle. When she brought over 2 mugs, she curled into the opposite end of the couch, leaving space between them. Can I ask you something? Elena wrapped her hands around her mug. When you hit David tonight, that wasn't about protection, was it? Adrian had known this conversation was coming. No. Then what was it about? He said you were broken, that you dragged me down. Adrian's jaw tightened at the memory. I hit him because I wanted to, because he deserved it, because I've spent weeks watching what he did to you, and I finally had an excuse. Elena was quiet for a moment. I don't know if that makes you a bad person or just honest. Can it be both? A small smile touched her lips. I guess it can. She took a sip of tea. For what it's worth, I'm glad you hit him. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking tea, letting the night settle around them. Adrian found himself studying the details of Elena's apartment more carefully. The books organized by color rather than author. The half-finished painting propped against the wall, abandoned mid-stroke. The photograph on the mantle of a younger Elena with an older woman who had the same eyes. Your mother? Adrian asked, gesturing to the photo. Yeah, she died 3 years ago, cancer. Elena's voice softened. She never liked David. Told me not to marry him. I didn't listen. We don't always listen to the people who see clearly. She would have liked you, I think. She always said I needed someone who didn't try to fix me, just stood beside me while I fixed myself. Elena set down her mug. Is that what you're doing? Standing beside me? Adrian didn't know how to answer that. The question implied something ongoing, something beyond the immediate crisis, and he hadn't let himself think that far ahead. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. I just know I'm not ready to stop yet. Elena looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she moved across the couch, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It wasn't hesitant or questioning. It was deliberate, certain, the kiss of someone who'd made a decision and was following through. Adrian froze for half a second, surprised, then responded. His hand came up to cup her face, and the kiss deepened into something that had been building since that first dance in the rain-soaked lounge. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. I've wanted to do that for weeks, she whispered. Elena, I know. I know all the reasons this is complicated. I know you're not sure what this is. I know I'm probably rebounding or emotionally vulnerable or whatever the therapist would say. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like myself again. And I don't want to lose that because we're too scared to figure out what it means. Adrian knew he should be the rational one, should point out that she'd just escaped an abusive relationship, that she needed time to heal, that mixing protection with romance was asking for disaster. But looking at Elena, fierce and fragile and absolutely certain, he couldn't make himself say any of it. This is a bad idea, he said instead. Probably. I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. Neither am I. Not anymore. Elena's hand found his. But maybe we can be bad at it together. Adrian pulled her close, kissed her again, and stopped trying to talk himself out of what he wanted. They stayed like that for a long time, kissing and talking and slowly letting the walls come down. Eventually, Elena fell asleep against his chest, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the night. Adrian stayed awake, one arm around her, watching the city lights through her window and wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. His phone buzzed quietly. A text from Marco. Morse booked a flight to Seattle. Leaves Tuesday morning. Divorce papers signed and filed. It's done. Relief washed over Adrian, but it was tempered by something else. A nagging feeling that things had resolved too easily, that Morse had folded too quickly. Men like David Morse didn't just walk away, not without one last play. Adrian was proven right 3 days later. The morning started normal enough. Elena had spent the weekend at Adrian's penthouse, both of them pretending it was just practical rather than admitting they didn't want to be apart. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Coffee in the morning, Elena working on restoration projects while Adrian handled business calls. Evenings spent cooking together and talking about everything except what they were doing. It felt dangerously close to domestic, dangerously close to something Adrian had never let himself want. Monday morning, Elena went back to her studio to meet with a client about a commissioned restoration. Adrian had offered security, but she'd refused. David's leaving tomorrow, she'd said, and I need to start living my life without being afraid. That includes going to work alone. Adrian hadn't liked it, but he'd understood. Rachel had agreed to keep distant surveillance, just to be safe. At 11 a.m., Rachel called. We have a problem. Adrian's hand tightened on his phone. What kind of problem? Morse never went home after the gala. His apartment's been empty all weekend, and the flight to Seattle? Canceled yesterday. Ice ran down Adrian's spine. Where is he? Unknown. I've got people checking his known associates, but he's gone dark. Find him. Now. Adrian was already grabbing his jacket. And get someone to Elena's studio immediately. Already on it. They'll be there in 3 minutes. Adrian made it in 5, running 2 more red lights he didn't care about. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding not from exertion, but from fear he wouldn't admit. Elena's studio door was closed but unlocked. Adrian pushed it open carefully, scanning the space. Elena was there, standing in front of her work table. And so was David Morse. He had a gun. It wasn't pointed at Elena, just held loosely at his side, but the threat was implicit. Morse looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, eyes red from lack of sleep or crying, or both. Adrian, Elena said, her voice remarkably steady. David was just leaving. No, I wasn't. Morse's voice was ragged. I was just explaining to Elena how this was all a misunderstanding, how we can work this out if she'll just listen. Adrian kept his hands visible, his movements slow. David, put down the gun. I can't do that. Not until Elena understands. Morse's grip tightened on the weapon. I love her. I've always loved her. Everything I did was because I couldn't stand losing her. That's not love, Elena said quietly. That's obsession. You don't understand. You never understood. Morse was crying now, tears streaking down his face. I gave you everything. A home, security, a life. And you threw it away. You humiliated me, destroyed my reputation, turned everyone against me. You did that yourself, Adrian said, taking a careful step forward. By hurting her, by refusing to let her go, by drugging her drink at the gala. I wasn't going to hurt her. I just wanted to talk to her without you interfering. Morse's attention swung wildly between Adrian and Elena. This is all your fault. You poisoned her against me. Made her think she was some kind of victim when she was the one who broke her vows. Divorce isn't a crime, David. But what you've done is. Adrian took another step. Multiple crimes. Stalking, harassment, attempted assault. And now? Breaking and entering, unlawful possession of a firearm, terroristic threats. You keep digging yourself deeper. I don't care anymore. My life is over anyway. You made sure of that. Morse's hand shook, the gun wavering. So maybe I should just end it. Take her with me. If I can't have her, no one can. The words hung in the air like poison. Adrian saw Elena go pale, saw her hand grip the edge of the work table for support. That's not going to happen, Adrian said, his voice dropping into the cold register he used when negotiations turned deadly. Because you're not going to hurt her. You're going to put down the gun, walk out of here, and turn yourself in. Why would I do that? Because I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing, to stop being the villain in this story and start being a man who takes responsibility for his actions. Adrian held Morse's gaze. Your life isn't over, David. It's just different now. But if you hurt Elena, if you even try, I will make sure you never see daylight again. And I have the resources to make that happen. You think I'm afraid of you? I think you're afraid of everything. Of being alone, of losing control, of facing what you've become. That's why you can't let go. Adrian's voice softened slightly. But holding on to her with violence won't change anything. It'll just prove everyone right about what kind of man you are. Morse's face crumpled. The gun wavered, dipped slightly. I just wanted her to love me again. That's not how love works. You can't force it. You can't terrorize someone into feeling it. Adrian took another step, close enough now that he could reach the gun if he moved fast enough. But you can choose to walk away with some dignity left. Turn yourself in. Get help. Let Elena go. For a long, terrible moment, Morse stood frozen. Adrian could see the war happening behind his eyes, desperation fighting logic, obsession fighting self-preservation. Then the studio door burst open and 3 police officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Drop the gun! Now! Morse spun toward them, his gun coming up in a panic response. Adrian didn't think, just moved. He lunged forward, slamming into Morse from the side, knocking him off balance. The gun went off, deafeningly loud in the enclosed space, the bullet punching through the ceiling. They hit the ground hard. Adrian's elbow connected with Morse's wrist, forcing his grip to loosen. The gun skittered across the floor. Police were shouting, rushing forward. Someone was screaming, Elena probably, though Adrian's ears were ringing too badly to be sure. Hands pulled him off Morse. An officer was reading rights. Another was cuffing Morse, who'd stopped fighting and just lay there crying. A third was checking Adrian for injuries. I'm fine, Adrian said, pushing away. Check on Elena. He found her backed against the wall, shaking violently but unharmed. Adrian crossed to her, wrapped her in his arms, and felt her collapse against him. I thought he was going to kill you, she sobbed. When you jumped at him, I thought, I know, I'm okay. We're both okay. The police took statements. Rachel appeared with lawyers. An ambulance checked both Adrian and Elena for shock. The detective in charge, a woman named Morrison who looked tired of domestic violence cases, pulled Adrian aside. That was incredibly stupid, she said bluntly. Tackling an armed man. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Luck, not skill. Morrison flipped through her notes. We've been building a case against Morse for the past week. Your lawyer's documentation helped, but we needed more evidence. Today gave us that. You were watching the studio? Had an officer positioned across the street when you called it in. He radioed for backup when he saw Morse enter with what appeared to be a weapon. Morson's expression softened slightly. We were coming in anyway. You just got there first. Will he go to jail? For a long time. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful possession, violation of a restraining order. He's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. She paused. Ms. Hart should know this isn't over. There'll be a trial, testimony, lawyers trying to discredit her. It's going to be difficult. She can handle it. Can you? The question surprised Adrian. What do you mean? I mean, you've inserted yourself pretty deep into this situation. Protection detail, financial support, now physically protecting her from an armed assailant. Morrison's eyes were sharp. That level of involvement usually means something more than professional interest. Adrian didn't answer, didn't need to. Morrison just nodded. Be careful, Mr. Vale. Hero complexes can be as dangerous as the threats we're protecting people from. Make sure you know the difference between helping someone and needing to be needed. She walked away before Adrian could respond, leaving him standing in Elena's studio, surrounded by police tape and overturned furniture, wondering if she was right. The next week passed in a blur of police interviews, legal proceedings, and news coverage. The story of David Morse's arrest made every local outlet, wealthy developer caught attempting to murder his ex-wife, stopped by her new boyfriend who happened to be one of Chicago's most mysterious business consultants. The boyfriend label stuck, even though neither Adrian nor Elena had officially defined what they were. Adrian found himself dodging reporters, declining interview requests, watching his carefully maintained privacy evaporate under public scrutiny. It should have bothered him more than it did. Elena moved into his penthouse while her studio was processed as a crime scene. She brought her restoration supplies, her half-finished paintings, her books organized by color. Slowly, his space became their space. Adrian waited for the panic to set in, for the claustrophobia of sharing his life to become unbearable, but it never came. Instead, he found himself looking forward to coming home, to finding Elena bent over some delicate restoration work, to cooking dinner together while she told him about her day. It was terrifying how natural it felt. One night, about 10 days after the incident, Elena came out of the bathroom looking pale. I need to tell you something. Adrian's first thought was medical. She'd been checked for injuries, but maybe they'd missed something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think so. Elena sat down heavily on the couch. I got a call from David's lawyer today. He wants to make a deal. Adrian went very still. What kind of deal? He'll plead guilty to all charges except whatever sentence the prosecution recommends. No trial. In exchange, he wants me to agree not to pursue a civil suit against him. Absolutely not. Adrian, no. He tried to kill you, Elena. He terrorized you for months. He deserves to lose everything. Adrian's voice was hard. A criminal conviction isn't enough. He should pay financially, too. I know. And part of me agrees with you. Elena twisted her hands together. But another part of me just wants this over. A trial means months of testimony, reliving everything, having lawyers tear apart my credibility. The civil suit could take years. And for what? Money I don't need and revenge that won't change what happened? It's not about revenge. It's about justice. Is there a difference? Adrian didn't have a good answer for that. In his world, they were often the same thing. But looking at Elena, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes, he realized she was asking a different question. She was asking for permission to move on. What do you want to do? He asked carefully. I want to accept this deal. Let him plead guilty, go to prison, and disappear from my life completely. Elena met his eyes. I want to stop being David Morse's victim and start being Elena Hart again. And I can't do that if I spend the next few years in court fighting him. You're sure? I'm sure. Adrian pulled her close, rested his chin on top of her head. Okay, then we accept the deal. Just like that? Just like that. It's your choice, Elena. It always was. She was quiet for a moment, then, thank you for understanding. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me what you really wanted. The deal was finalized 3 days later. David Morse pleaded guilty to attempted murder, assault, stalking, and multiple weapons charges. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 15. By the time he got out, he'd be in his 60s, his business gone, his reputation destroyed, his life completely different. Elena attended the sentencing. Adrian went with her, sitting in the gallery while she read a victim impact statement that was honest and devastating and completely her. She didn't cry, didn't rage, just spoke calmly about the fear she'd lived with, the freedom she'd found, and the life she was building now. Morse sat with his head down, not looking at her, not looking at anything. When it was over, when the judge's gavel fell and Morse was led away in handcuffs, Elena took a deep breath and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Outside, reporters clustered around them, shouting questions. Adrian's security team created a path through the crowd. They made it to the car, drove away from the courthouse, and didn't speak until they were halfway back to the penthouse. "How do you feel?" Adrian asked. Elena considered the question. "Empty. Like I should feel something more, relief or satisfaction or closure, but I just feel empty." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline and fear for months. Now that it's over, there's nothing left to fuel you." "Is this what it was like for you after your mother's killer died?" Adrian had never told anyone how he'd felt that day, but he found himself wanting to tell Elena. "I felt cheated, like I'd been preparing for a confrontation that never came. He just died, and all the anger I'd been carrying had nowhere to go." "What did you do with it?" "Used it. Built a career on making sure other people's monsters didn't get away with it." Adrian glanced at her. Probably not the healthiest coping mechanism. "But it led you to me. So maybe it wasn't all bad." Adrian pulled the car over suddenly, right there on Lakeshore Drive with the water stretching gray and endless beside them. Elena looked at him, confused. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done weeks ago." Adrian turned to face her fully. "I'm falling in love with you. Probably already fell, past tense, but I'm bad at recognizing these things in real time. And I need you to know that before we go any further. Because if you're not ready for that, if this is still just about protection and safety and someone being there while you heal, I need to know now." Elena stared at him, her eyes wide. Then she started laughing, not mockery, but genuine, surprised joy. "What's funny?" "You. Stopping the car on Lakeshore Drive to tell me you're falling in love with me like you're delivering a business report." She was still laughing, tears starting at the corners of her eyes. "You're so bad at this." "I know. I warned you. I'm falling in love with you too, you idiot." Elena grabbed his face and kissed him hard. "Have been for weeks. I just didn't know if I was allowed to feel that yet. If it was real or just trauma bonding, or me confusing protection with affection. And now I know it's real. Messy and complicated, and probably too fast, but real." She rested her forehead against his. "So yes, Adrian Vale, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for you." They kissed until someone honked at them for blocking traffic. Then Adrian drove them home. Not to his penthouse or her apartment, but home. The place they'd somehow built together in the space between protection and something more. That night, lying in bed with Elena asleep beside him, Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Marco. "News just broke. Carmine Vallin's organization implicated in federal fraud investigation. They're saying you were the one who tipped off the FBI." Adrian stared at the message, ice forming in his stomach. Carmine Vallin. The name he'd been avoiding thinking about for weeks, focused as he was on Morse. Carmine Vallin, one of Chicago's most dangerous power brokers. Someone Adrian had crossed 6 months ago over a business deal gone wrong. Someone who held grudges. He texted back, "I didn't tip anyone off." Marco's response, "Doesn't matter. He thinks you did. And he just released a statement saying you'll regret interfering in his business." Adrian carefully got out of bed, trying not to wake Elena. In his office, he pulled up the news article. Sure enough, there was Carmine Vallin's face, his lawyer reading a prepared statement that was technically about the investigation, but really about Adrian. A warning, a threat, a declaration of war. Adrian had been so focused on protecting Elena from Morse that he'd forgotten about his own enemies, forgotten that in his world, solving one problem often created 3 more. And now Elena was caught in the middle of it. His phone rang. Rachel's voice was urgent. "Please tell me you've seen the news." "I've seen it. Vallin's people have been asking questions about Elena, who she is, why you're protecting her, if she matters to you. Put security on her immediately. full detail, 24/7. Already done. But boss, if Valen thinks she's leverage, I know what he thinks. Adrian's voice was cold. And I know what he'll try. We need to be ready. After hanging up, Adrian stood at his window, looking out at Chicago's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, Carmine Valen was planning his next move. And Adrian had just given him the perfect weapon. A woman he loved, a vulnerability he couldn't hide, a weakness that could be exploited. He should wake Elena, should tell her that the danger wasn't over, that it had just changed shape, that loving him came with a price she might not be willing to pay. But watching her sleep, peaceful for maybe the first time since he'd met her, Adrian couldn't bring himself to shatter that peace. Not yet. Tomorrow they'd face whatever was coming. Tonight, he'd let her rest. He just hoped it wouldn't be the last peaceful night either of them had. Elena woke him at dawn, her hand on his shoulder, her voice cutting through the thin sleep he'd managed. You never came back to bed. Adrian opened his eyes to find her standing over him, still in one of his shirts, her hair messy from sleep. He'd fallen asleep at his desk, the news article about Carmine Valen still glowing on his laptop screen. Bad habit, he said, sitting up and immediately regretting the position his neck had been in for the past few hours. Elena's eyes went to the laptop. She read the headline, then looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite decode. Who's Carmine Valen? Adrian could have lied. Should have, probably. Told her it was just business, nothing to worry about. But after everything they'd been through, after the conversation in the car yesterday, lying felt impossible. Someone from my past. Someone I crossed 6 months ago. He closed the laptop. He thinks I'm responsible for tipping off the FBI about his operation. Are you? No. But it doesn't matter what's true, it matters what he believes. Elena sat on the edge of the desk, her bare feet not quite touching the floor. And what does he believe? That I interfered in his business, that I need to be taught a lesson. Adrian met her eyes, and now that he knows about you, he has a way to do it. The words hung between them. Elena didn't look away, didn't flinch. Just processed the information the way she processed everything, calmly, methodically, finding the truth beneath the fear. So we're back where we started, she said finally. Me in danger, you trying to protect me, both of us pretending this is sustainable. It's not the same, isn't it? Elena's voice was soft but firm. David wanted to control me through fear. This Valen person wants to control you through me. Different people, same dynamic. I become leverage. Adrian stood, needing to move, to think. I won't let him use you. That's not your choice to make. Elena followed him across the office. Adrian, I love you. I meant what I said yesterday, but I need to know what I'm signing up for. Is this my life now, jumping from one threat to another because of who you are and what you do? No, this is different. Valen is dangerous, powerful, connected. I know. Elena crossed her arms. You're going to tell me you can handle it, that you've dealt with worse, that I should trust you. And I do trust you. But I also need the truth, all of it. Adrian looked at her, standing in his office wearing his shirt, hair uncombed, no makeup, completely herself. The woman who'd survived David Morse, who'd stood up in court and told her truth, who'd chosen to love him despite every reason not to. She deserved the truth. Carmine Valen runs half the construction contracts in Chicago through shell companies and political connections, Adrian said. 6 months ago, a client hired me to break a contract that Valen's people were using to funnel money. I did my job. The contract was voided, my client walked away clean, and Valen lost about $15 million. And he blamed you. He blamed everyone. But yes, I was on the list. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. I thought he'd moved on. He had bigger problems, federal attention, investigations. I was a minor irritation in his world. Until the FBI investigation. Until that. Now he thinks I had something to do with it, and he's looking for revenge. Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking, can we prove you didn't tip off the FBI? Proving negatives is nearly impossible, and Valen doesn't care about proof. He cares about perception and power. So what do we do? The we hit Adrian harder than it should have. Elena wasn't asking how he'd handle it, wasn't stepping back to let him deal with his mess alone. She was including herself in the solution. I meet with him, Adrian said, face to face, Clear the air before this escalates. And you think he'll just listen? Accept your word? No. But I can make him understand that coming after you would be a mistake. Elena's laugh was sharp. Another threat, another show of force. That worked so well with David. Valen isn't Morse. He's a businessman, not a stalker. He operates on cost-benefit analysis. If I make the cost of targeting you higher than the benefit of revenge, he'll back off. You're gambling with my safety. I'm trying to protect it. By putting yourself in danger. By walking into a meeting with a man who wants to hurt you. Elena's voice cracked slightly. Adrian, I just got you. I can't lose you now. He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. You won't. I've been handling men like Valen for 15 years. I know how to navigate this. David knew how to navigate his world too. He was careful, calculated, always had a plan. And he still ended up in prison because he underestimated what he was dealing with. Elena pulled back to look at him. What if you're underestimating Valen? Then I'll adapt, but I won't hide from him, and I won't let him dictate our lives through fear. Elena studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, but I have one condition. What's that? I go with you to the meeting. Absolutely not. You said this isn't like David, that Valen's a businessman, that he operates on logic rather than emotion. So let him see that I'm a real person, not just leverage. Let him understand that hurting me means declaring war not just on you, but on someone who has her own connections, her own voice, her own ability to make his life difficult. Adrian started to argue, then stopped. The logic was actually sound. Valen seeing Elena as a person rather than a tool might shift the calculation. And having her there meant she wouldn't be vulnerable somewhere else while Adrian was occupied. You stay quiet unless I signal otherwise, he said finally. You don't engage, don't react to anything he says. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. No questions. Deal. The meeting was arranged for that evening, neutral territory at a restaurant Valen owned in River North. Adrian spent the day preparing, reviewing everything he had on Valen's operation, mapping potential leverage points, planning contingencies if the conversation went wrong. Marco wasn't happy about any of it. This is a bad idea, he said for the third time, pacing Adrian's office while Elena worked on a restoration project in the corner. Valen doesn't do friendly meetings. He does ambushes. Then we'll be ready for an ambush. With what? You're walking into his territory with minimal backup and the one person he could use against you. Which is why he won't try anything. Too obvious. Adrian didn't look up from the files he was reviewing. Valen's smart. He knows hurting Elena at a meeting I arranged would point every investigation straight back to him. Unless he doesn't care about that anymore. Unless he's decided burning everything down is worth taking you with it. That was the risk Adrian couldn't entirely calculate. Valen's FBI troubles might have made him desperate. Desperate men didn't always follow logical patterns. Elena's voice cut through the tension. He's right to worry. This could go badly. Both men turned to look at her. She hadn't stopped working on the painting in front of her, carefully removing centuries of grime with a solution that smelled faintly of chemicals. But it could also be exactly what we need, she continued. If Valen sees we're not afraid, that we're willing to face him directly, it changes the dynamic. Fear gives people power. Taking that fear away takes the power back. This is an art restoration, Marco said. You can't just remove the damage and hope the original shows through. Elena finally looked up, met his eyes. Actually, that's exactly what this is. David covered me in so much damage I couldn't see myself anymore. Adrian helped me remove it, layer by layer, until the original was visible again. Now someone's trying to do the same thing to both of us, cover us in fear and threats until we can't see clearly, so we remove those layers. We face them directly. Marco looked at Adrian. She's either brilliant or crazy. Can't she be both? Adrian said. At 7 p.m., they arrived at Valen's restaurant. It was the kind of place that looked expensive but felt empty. All dark wood and low lighting and tables spaced far enough apart that conversations stayed private. The host recognized Adrian immediately, led them to a private room in the back without a word. Carmine Valen was already there, sitting at a table with a glass of red wine and an expression that gave nothing away. He was older than Adrian expected, mid-60s, silver hair immaculately styled, suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Two men stood against the back wall, security clearly, though they were trying to look decorative. Valen's eyes went to Elena immediately. assessed her with the cold calculation of someone used to evaluating assets. "Ms. Hart," he said, his voice smooth and cultured, "I've heard a great deal about you. Please, sit." Adrian held Elena's chair, then sat beside her, positioning himself between her and Valen. Marco remained standing near the door, watching the security guards. "Thank you for meeting with us," Adrian said. "Did I have a choice? You requested this conversation rather insistently." Valen sipped his wine. "I assume this is about the unfortunate news regarding my business ventures." "It's about the assumption that I had anything to do with your federal troubles." "And did you?" "No?" Valen studied him for a moment. "You understand why I might doubt that. We've had our disagreements in the past. You cost me a significant amount of money, and now, coincidentally, I find myself under investigation. The timing is suspicious." "The timing is coincidental. Your organization's been operating in gray areas for years. Eventually, someone was going to look closely. That's not my doing." "Perhaps. Or perhaps you saw an opportunity to settle an old score and took it." Valen's attention shifted back to Elena. "Tell me, Ms. Hart, do you know what your boyfriend does for a living?" Elena's voice was steady. "He solves problems." A diplomatic answer. "Has he explained what kind of problems?" "The kind people like you create." Valen's eyebrows rose slightly. "People like me. Interesting. And what kind of person do you think I am?" "The kind who uses fear and intimidation to get what he wants. The kind who views people as tools rather than humans." Elena's voice didn't waver. "The kind who thinks threatening me will give you leverage over Adrian." "It won't?" Valen looked genuinely curious. "It will, but not the way you think." Elena leaned forward slightly. "If you hurt me, Adrian will destroy you. Not because he's afraid, but because he loves me. And love makes people capable of things fear never could." The room went very quiet. Even Valen's security guard shifted uncomfortably. Then Valen laughed. It was genuine, surprised laughter that transformed his face from cold calculation to something almost human. "I like her," he said to Adrian. "She's got steel. How did you find her?" "She found me, in a lounge, asking for a dance to escape her abusive ex-husband." Adrian kept his voice level. "That ex-husband is now serving 23 years for attempted murder. I helped make that happen." A romantic origin story, very moving. Valen's humor faded. "But it doesn't change our situation. Someone tipped off the FBI about operations I've spent years building. Someone provided detailed documentation about shell companies, offshore accounts, falsified permits. That level of information could only come from someone with access. Or someone who knows how to dig. I'm not the only person in Chicago who knows how to find buried information." "No, but you're the only one with a grudge and the skills to act on it." Valen set down his wine glass. "Here's what I think happened. You saw an opportunity. My organization was vulnerable after our last encounter. You gathered evidence, waited for the right moment, and handed it to federal investigators. Then you sat back and watched the dominoes fall." "That's a good theory. It's also wrong." "Prove it." Adrian pulled out his phone, brought up a file, slid it across the table. "That's every piece of communication I've had for the past 6 months. Emails, texts, phone records, all of it. You'll notice a complete absence of contact with anyone from federal law enforcement." Valen didn't touch the phone. "Records can be scrubbed. Not by me. I don't have that level of access." Adrian leaned back. "But I know who does. 3 names, to be specific. People inside your organization who had both motive and opportunity to turn on you. I can give you those names." That got Valen's attention. "In exchange for what?" "You leave Elena alone. Completely. No surveillance, no threats, no using her to get to me. She's off limits. And if I refuse, then I give those names to the FBI instead, along with everything I know about your operation, which is substantial." Adrian's voice went cold. "I was planning to stay out of your mess, Carmine, but you made it personal when you started asking questions about Elena. So now you have a choice. Take the information I'm offering and find your real enemy, or keep coming after me and watch your whole organization collapse." Valen was quiet for a long moment, studying Adrian's face, looking for tells, for weakness, for any sign this was a bluff. He wouldn't find any, because it wasn't a bluff. "You're either the smartest man I've ever met or the stupidest," Valen said finally. "Coming here, making demands, acting like you have the upper hand when you're sitting in my restaurant surrounded by my people. I'm neither smart nor stupid. I'm just a man protecting someone I love." Adrian held his gaze. "Same as you'd do if someone threatened your family." Something shifted in Valen's expression. A flicker of recognition, maybe. Or respect. Or calculation that Adrian's threat was real enough to take seriously. "Give me the names," Valen said. Adrian rattled off 3 names, along with specific details about their positions in Valen's organization and what access they'd had. He'd spent the afternoon confirming the information, making sure it was solid enough to redirect Valen's attention. Valen listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When Adrian finished, he nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." "And Elena is indeed off limits. You have my word." Valen stood, signaling the meeting was over. "But understand something, Mr. Vale. My word is only good as long as yours is. If I find out you were lying about the FBI, if I discover you had any involvement in my current troubles, our agreement is void." "Fair enough." They left the restaurant in silence, Marco leading the way to the car while Rachel appeared from somewhere to cover their exit. Adrian didn't relax until they were 2 blocks away, and he was certain they weren't being followed. "That went better than expected," Marco said from the driver's seat. "Or worse," Rachel countered from the passenger side. "He could be planning something right now." "He's not." Adrian had his arm around Elena, feeling her trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. He got what he wanted, a target for his anger that isn't me. And I got what I wanted, assurance that Elena's safe. "You traded 3 people's lives for mine," Elena said quietly. "I gave him 3 names of people who actually did betray him. Their consequences are their own doing." "But you knew who they were, and you could have warned them." Adrian didn't have a good answer for that. She was right. He'd made a choice, and that choice would result in 3 people facing Valen's very specific brand of justice. It wasn't clean, it wasn't heroic, it was necessary. "I'm not a good man, Elena. I told you that from the beginning. I know. I just forget sometimes when you're being sweet or protective or making me coffee in the morning." Elena pulled away slightly to look at him. "But then you do something like this and I remember what you're capable of. Does that change how you feel?" She considered the question seriously, which Adrian appreciated. No quick reassurances, no empty platitudes, just honest evaluation. "No," she said finally. "It scares me sometimes. Makes me wonder what else you're capable of, what lines you'd cross if you thought it was protecting me. But it doesn't change how I feel. You are who you are. I love you anyway." The "anyway" carried weight. Acknowledgement that loving him meant accepting parts of him that weren't easy or comfortable, that he made decisions she might not agree with, operated in spaces she didn't fully understand, that he was, fundamentally, the kind of man who'd trade 3 lives for hers without hesitation. Back at the penthouse, they didn't talk about the meeting, didn't dissect what had happened or plan for what might come next. They just existed together, Elena returning to her restoration work, Adrian catching up on emails, both of them in the same space but doing separate things. It felt normal, domestic, real. Around midnight, Elena set down her tools and stretched. "I'm thinking about getting my own studio space again. The insurance company cleared my old one, but I don't know if I can go back there after everything that happened." "You could work here." "I could, but I think I need something that's mine, a space that doesn't belong to David's memory or your protection or any of this." She gestured vaguely at the penthouse. "Just mine." Adrian understood. "I know a building in West Loop. Good light, good security, reasonable rent. I can make a call." "Would it be weird if I said I don't want you to make the call? If I want to find it myself, negotiate my own lease, build something without your help?" "No, it makes sense." Adrian closed his laptop. "You're reclaiming your independence. I'm not supposed to be another person controlling your life. You're not. You saved my life multiple times." Elena crossed to where he sat, settled into his lap. "But now I need to figure out how to live it, without being afraid, without being protected, without someone always watching. Rachel's surveillance can stop. I know you want to keep me safe, but I can't live with guards and cameras forever. At some point, I have to trust that the danger has passed. What if it hasn't? Then I'll deal with it. The way I dealt with David showing up at my studio, the way I dealt with sitting across from Carmine Valen tonight. Elena cupped his face in her hands. I'm not helpless, Adrian. I never was. I just forgot for a while. You helped me remember. Now you have to let me prove it. Adrian knew she was right, knew that holding on too tight, protecting too much, would eventually damage what they were building. But the thought of Elena out in the world without his security team, without constant monitoring, without insurance that she was safe, it made his chest tight with anxiety he couldn't quite name. I'll have Rachel pull the surveillance, he said finally. But you have to promise me something. What? You don't take unnecessary risks. You stay aware of your surroundings. And if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. Deal. Elena kissed him softly. See? We can compromise. That night, lying in bed with Elena asleep beside him, Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The name's checked out. We're even. Don't cross me again. Valen. Confirming the information had been accurate, that his mole hunt had been successful. The threat was implicit but clear. This truce was conditional on Adrian staying in his lane. Adrian deleted the text and turned off his phone. Tomorrow he'd deal with the implications, with whatever fallout came from redirecting Valen's anger. Tonight, he'd sleep knowing Elena was safe, that the immediate threat had passed. It wasn't perfect, wasn't clean, but it was enough. 3 weeks later, Elena signed a lease on a studio in a converted factory building. The space was raw, exposed brick, concrete floors, windows facing north that let in perfect light. She spent a week setting it up, arranging her tools, hanging the paintings she'd been working on, building something that was entirely hers. Adrian helped when asked, stayed away when not, learned the difference between supporting and controlling, between protecting and suffocating. It wasn't easy. Every instinct he had screamed to maintain oversight, to keep Elena in sight, to make sure no threat could reach her, but he forced himself to trust her strength instead of his fear. On the day Elena officially opened her studio to clients, she invited Adrian to see the finished space. He arrived to find her arranging flowers, not lilies and roses like Morse had sent, but wildflowers in mismatched vases that looked chaotic and perfect. "What do you think?" she asked, gesturing around the space. "I think it's exactly right. Not too much? The flowers, I mean. I thought about leaving them out, but then I realized I was still letting David dictate what I do. He used flowers as a weapon, so I'm reclaiming them." Adrian crossed to her, pulled her close. "It's perfect. All of it." They stood like that for a moment, surrounded by art in various stages of restoration, by damage being carefully repaired, by broken things being made whole again. "I got a call this morning," Elena said quietly. "The museum wants me to head their entire restoration department. Full-time position, good salary, benefits. It's everything I've been working toward." "That's incredible. Congratulations." "I'm thinking about turning it down." Adrian pulled back to look at her. "Why?" "Because I like this. Working for myself, choosing my own projects, building something that's mine." Elena gestured around the studio. "The museum job is prestigious and stable, but it's also someone else's vision, someone else's rules. I've spent too long living by other people's rules. So don't take it. Build your own thing instead. It's risky. No guaranteed income, no security. Everything could fall apart, or it could succeed beyond anything you imagined." Adrian smiled. "Besides, you've faced worse than financial risk. You can handle this." Elena kissed him, soft and certain. "We can handle this." The "we" still surprised him sometimes, still felt foreign and terrifying and absolutely right. That evening, they went back to the penthouse together. Elena made dinner while Adrian reviewed contracts for a new client. They moved around each other easily, comfortable in the shared space, no longer questioning whether this was temporary or permanent. It just was. After dinner, music played softly from Elena's phone. Something classical that Adrian didn't recognize but liked anyway. Elena stood, held out her hand. "Dance with me?" "Right now? In the kitchen? Why not? No rain, no ex-husband, no danger. Just us." Adrian took her hand, pulled her close. They swayed to the music, awkward at first because they were both terrible at dancing, but finding a rhythm that worked. "This is better than the lounge," Elena said. "No threats, no fear, no pretending." Elena met his eyes. "That first night, we were both pretending. You were pretending to be uninvolved, I was pretending to be brave. Now, we don't have to pretend anymore. What are we now? Honest, complicated, real. Elena smiled. Two people who found each other in the worst circumstances and chose to stay anyway. They danced until the song ended, then through two more songs, until the music shifted to something faster and they had to stop. But neither of them pulled away immediately. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, finding peace in the quiet moment. Adrian's phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again, then a third time. "You should get that," Elena said. It was Marco, his voice tense. "We have a situation." Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where a client's deal just went sideways and they need immediate intervention. High stakes, time sensitive. I wouldn't call if it wasn't important." Adrian looked at Elena. She'd already stepped back, reading the shift in his posture. "How long?" Adrian asked. 2 days, maybe 3. Clients in Miami need you on site to negotiate." Every part of Adrian wanted to say no. To stay here with Elena, to keep dancing in the kitchen, to pretend his old life didn't still have hooks in him. But that old life was how he paid for everything, how he'd built the resources to protect Elena in the first place, and walking away from a client mid-crisis wasn't an option. "I'll be on a plane in 2 hours," he said. After hanging up, he turned to Elena. "I have to go to Miami. Client emergency." "I heard." She didn't look upset, just resigned. "How long?" "Few days at most." "Okay." Elena crossed back to him, straightened his collar unnecessarily. "Be safe. Come back. Always." "I mean it, Adrian. Whatever this is, whatever danger you're walking into, remember you have someone to come back to now. That changes things." "I know." He kissed her, trying to pour everything he felt into the gesture. Then he pulled away and started packing, calling Rachel to arrange security for Elena while he was gone, texting Marco flight details. Business as usual, problem solving, the life he'd built before Elena. Except now it felt different. Felt like something he was doing temporarily before returning to something better. Something real. 2 days later, Adrian stood in a Miami high-rise, negotiating a deal that had gone nuclear. The client, a tech entrepreneur who'd gotten involved with the wrong investors, needed an exit strategy that wouldn't end with him in prison or in the ocean. Adrian delivered. It's what he did. But the whole time, his mind was in Chicago, wondering what Elena was doing, if she was safe, if she missed him the way he missed her. On the third day, the deal was done. The client was safe, the investors were satisfied, and Adrian was free to go home. He called Elena from the airport. "I'm coming back tonight." "Good. The penthouse is too quiet without you." "How's the studio?" "Busy. I took on 2 new clients this week, both referred from the museum, so turning down that job might have been the right call after all." Elena paused. "Adrian?" "Yeah? I love you. I know we've said it before, but I wanted to say it again, just in case you needed to hear it." I did need to hear it. Adrian's chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I love you too." The flight back felt longer than it should have. Adrian spent it reviewing files he didn't care about, thinking about a woman who'd changed everything, wondering how he'd gotten so lucky. When he finally made it back to the penthouse at midnight, exhausted from travel and 3 days of high-stakes negotiation, Elena was waiting. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest, one of his shirts worn over her pajamas. Adrian stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching her, memorizing the scene, the evidence that someone was waiting for him, that he had something beyond work, beyond problems to solve, beyond the endless cycle of threats and responses. He had home. Elena stirred, opened her eyes, smiled when she saw him. "You're back." "I'm back." "How was Miami?" "Successful? Boring? I spent the whole time wishing I was here." Good answer. Elena stretched, made room for him on the couch. "Come here. Tell me about it." So he did. Not the details, those were confidential, but the broad strokes, the challenge, the solution, the relief when it was over. Elena listened, asked smart questions, understood what he couldn't say directly. When he finished, she kissed him. "I'm proud of you for solving the problem, for coming home, for being exactly who you are. Even though who I am is complicated, especially because of that." Elena settled against his chest. Simple would be boring. I prefer complicated. They fell asleep there on the couch, tangled together, neither bothering to move to the bedroom. In the morning, Adrian woke to find Elena already up, making coffee in the kitchen, humming something off-key. He watched her for a moment before she noticed him, watched her move through his space, their space, like she belonged there. Because she did. Coffee's almost ready, Elena said without turning around. And I'm thinking we should go out for breakfast. There's a place near my studio that makes amazing pancakes. Sounds perfect. And it was. The breakfast, the walk through Chicago's morning streets, the easy conversation about nothing important. All of it was perfect in its ordinary simplicity. This was what Elena had given him. Not just love, not just companionship, but the ability to find perfection in ordinary moments, to value quiet mornings more than dramatic rescues, to want breakfast and conversation more than adrenaline and victory. She'd given him a life worth living instead of just problems worth solving. Later, walking back from breakfast, Elena stopped suddenly. I want to paint again. Then paint. No, I mean really paint. Not restoration work, but my own art. I used to do it all the time before David, and I want that back. Want to create something new instead of just repairing what's broken. Adrian pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Then we'll set up a painting area in the studio, or the penthouse, wherever you want. The studio. It should be there, where everything else new is happening. Elena looked up at him. Will you pose for me sometime? I want to paint you. I'm not exactly an inspiring subject. You're wrong. You're the most inspiring subject I can think of. Elena's smile was soft. The man who saved me, who loved me, who gave me my life back. You saved yourself. I just helped. Then let me paint the man who helped. Please? Adrian couldn't say no to her. Didn't want to. Okay, but don't expect a masterpiece. Every painting is a masterpiece if you understand what you're looking at. They walked home hand in hand, planning the painting, talking about colors and light and perspective. Normal couple things. Normal life things. And for the first time in 15 years, Adrian wasn't planning 3 moves ahead. Wasn't calculating threats or building contingencies. Wasn't preparing for the next problem. He was just living, just being. Just loving someone who loved him back. In a city built on power and consequence, on calculated moves and carefully maintained control, Adrian Vale had found something more valuable than all of it. He'd found peace. And standing in his kitchen that evening, watching Elena laugh at something ridiculous, paint smudges already on her hands from the canvas she'd started, Adrian realized the truth he'd been avoiding. This wasn't temporary. Wasn't a phase or a distraction or something that would fade when the novelty wore off. This was his life now, his future, his choice. And he'd chosen her, would choose her every time. Elena caught him staring. What? Nothing, just thinking. About? About how one dance changed everything. Elena crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his waist. Best decision I ever made. Asking you to dance. Best decision I ever made was saying yes. They stood like that, holding each other, the city sprawling outside the windows, indifferent and eternal. But inside this space they'd built together, nothing else mattered. Not Adrian's past, not Elena's trauma, not the threats they'd faced or the battles they'd won. Just this moment, this choice, this life they were building one ordinary day at a time. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.